We were last here, what? Wednesday night? 3 days ago. Rain nodded out the bank of empty windows, at the corpses far below the castle. Those poor buggers weren't down there 3 days ago. I would have noticed. Yes, quite. Evelyn stepped away from the window, breath shaking as she struggled to compose herself. You're not the only one who can recognize blood and guts, Rain. The rest of us do have eyes. Anybody would have noticed that mess, that dash. Mystery, Preem intoned in her clear, bell-like voice. Evelyn shut her mouth. She wasn't exaggerating. The view through the binoculars made for a gruesome sight. A crimson mess was smeared at the base of what I thought of as Castle Hill, in the perhaps 20 or 30 meters of clear ground before the jumble of the copied Sherrowford streets full of writhing alien life. The carnage was visible enough with the naked eye, even through the sluggish veils of fog. Against the omnipresent gray of the dead jade landscape, red stood out like an open wound. But the first corpse was intact, and not so easy to pick out. I had to brace my elbows against my chest to steady the shaking, wavering view through the binoculars, the metal cold in my hands, tendrils of fog obscuring the details. The corpse was flat on its back, legs straight, boot toes pointing upward, hands folded across the chest like an Egyptian mummy. Short dark hair, heavily muscled build, probably a man. Like he'd just lain down out there and gone to sleep in the middle of a magic circle. The circle was clear as day, even through the fog. The rusty red color left no mystery as to the medium with which it had been painted. The second corpse was pulped meat. Gender, age, build, clothing, all pulverized. Spars of snapped bone, organs burst like overripe fruit, a skid mark of crimson and brown and bile on the ground. A dozen meters from the first corpse, almost as if unrelated. The splattered mess seemed unreal through the binocular lenses, but I couldn't stop staring. Perhaps if I looked for long enough, the horrible sight would reveal itself as an imitation in Play-Doh and paint. Distant whale song washed through my mind, the constant refrain of the monolithic Squid-Moon children out there in the mist, their train-sized tentacles still dancing in the upper air, uncaring of the human corpses far below. The other local fauna carried on as normal down in the copied streets, 1,000 chittering, skittering, hooting sounds muffled by the fog. We'd learnt that the strange wildlife avoided Castle Hill. We'd never spotted anything risking the climb. But now they avoided the corpses too, as if the dead bodies had created an invisible barrier. Bacteria in a petri dish forced back by a drop of penicillin. Heather. Hey, Heather. Rain touched my shoulder and I jumped, a gasp escaping my throat as I jerked the binoculars down. Hey, it's a grisly sight, no need to stare. You saw. I swallowed hard. It wasn't as if I hadn't seen corpses before, but this seemed almost unreal. Yes, I see. I saw, I mean. Where on earth did they come from? Vermin, Evelyn hissed through her teeth. I'm sorry. I blinked at her, still numb. It's Lilbun, she snapped. It's Lilbun, Edward or Zombie Alexander, I won't try to guess which, trying to muscle back in. That, she jabbed the head of her walking stick at the bank of empty windows. That out there is a failed ritual. Or God forbid, one that worked. Vermin. Bastards. She fumed, working herself up. Fool to think they'd ever give us an answer. Negotiations, my arse, may as well talk terms with a scorpion. Behind her, on the far side of the gateway and safely back in Sherrowford, in the light and warmth of the workshop, Tenny flinched. Her antennae twitched rapidly, big black eyes gone wide, tentacles darting about. Lozzie tried to hush her, draw her attention with little private whispers, but she was staring at Evelyn now, fascinated or alarmed, I couldn't tell which. Evie, slow down dash, I said. Evie's right, Rain said, low and serious. She put a hand on my back and gently but firmly steered me away from the window, back toward the gateway. With her other hand, she drew her pistol from inside her jacket. Which means we're all leaving, right now. Rain, we can't just leave those bodies down there, I protested, my heels skidding across the floor. I am not bloody well retreating, Evelyn spat. Tenny flinched again, tentacles whirling like a surprised octopus. Evelyn planted her feet wide, walking stick wider, held at an angle as she tilted her chin up. She stood like a defiant general on some ancient battlefield. This small woman with her bent spine and twisted leg and prosthetic limb was ready to command an army. What she had, however, was us. Evie Rain started, a warning in her voice. Evelyn clicked her fingers. Preem, fetch my wand. Please, she added, catching herself. And call Zheng. She turned and shouted over her shoulder, through the gateway, past Tenny and Lazi. Zheng. I have need of you, barbarian. Get in here and make yourself useful. I closed my eyes and sighed. That was not going to earn Zheng's approval. Evelyn say, you get back through that magical door, Rain said. Or I will pick you up and carry you, and you didn't like it much last time I had to do that. Evelyn's eyes blazed at Rain. I am not letting them have this. No. Not this time. Back in the workshop, Zheng appeared around the kitchen doorway, both curious and unimpressed. I caught her eye and pulled a contrite face, a surrogate apology. Shaman, she rumbled. Bodies, I said, then turned to Rain, stumbling over both my words and feet as she all but manhandled me toward the gate. Rain, we should at least check. That though the other one, in the circle, he looked like he was sleeping. Maybe he's not, dead. And maybe it's a trap. Heather, we can totally leave them here. Oh yes, why not? Evelyn said, voice full of scorn. We've left plenty of other corpses rotting in this castle. We should drag them all back up here and give them a proper burial, fill the back garden with murder evidence waiting to be found. Evie, that's not what I meant, I dash. This little beachhead was a mistake, she spat. I should have said about securing this place weeks ago. Had Preem go over every nook and cranny and put wards on every door and window. Well, no more mistakes. Rain sighed and made a gesture like she wanted to put her face in her hand. Preem hadn't moved a muscle to obey her mistress. Zheng-eyed Tenny, who was staring back at her like a cornered cat, tentacles drifting wide to present a united front. Lazi cooed and stroked her and tried to lead her off to one side, out of Zheng's path, but Tenny kept glancing back at us, rooted to the spot, caught between Zheng and an argument. Lazi, I hissed. Get Tenny out of the workshop, please, this is upsetting her. I'm trying. Try. Tenny tens come on, back we go, Lazi sing-songed at her. Tugging on one arm and one tentacle. But Tenny was on high alert now, flesh cloak twitching and shuddering, void black eyes blinking back and forth at every cross word. Evie, hey, come on, Rain said. I've spelled it out already. Those dead dudes weren't down there 3 days ago, which means somebody's been here. Yes. Exactly. Evelyn spat. And they might still be here. Rain let her eyes say the rest. She looked pointedly down the castle corridor, in the direction of the throne room, which we hadn't visited a second time since our run-in with Lazi's giant, bee-tentacled friend. Then she looked the other way, in the direction we'd never explored. The corridor kinked off into unknown depths lit only by the omnipresent foggy light from outdoors. Then she looked at Evelyn again. Oh, I said, a cold chill creeping up my spine. Evelyn opened her mouth and hesitated, as if reluctant to give ground. She swallowed and finally followed Rain's glance down the corridor, stared for a moment, then swore under her breath. Zheng strode across the workshop. She passed Tenny without a glance, ignored her rising hiss, and asked me a silent question with her eyes. We found corpses. I indicated the window. Zheng stepped through the gate. Wisps of cloying fog swirled around her legs as she disturbed the soupy air. She shot a dead-eyed, murderous look down at Evelyn as she passed, but Evelyn wasn't paying attention, grinding her teeth and trying to think. Zheng walked to the window and gripped the edge, showing no disgust at the unnatural, dead-thing touch of the bone-like gray jade. She peered down and grunted, waved away my offer of binoculars. If this was a trap, Evelyn was saying, slowly and carefully, chewing each word. They would have made their move already. They'd be up here with a gun, or have planted an IED for us, or something. Anything. Preem, what are you waiting for? Fetch my wand. Please. She managed to make please sound like an order, and this time Preem finally relented. She marched past her mistress and back into the workshop. I am not leaving these idiot amateurs to despoil and colonize this place a second time. We need to find the gate they came in through and shit on it from a very great height. There's too many factors here, Rain said, shaking her head. What if that guy down there isn't dead? Maybe it's a zombie playing possum. Maybe it's a trap to draw us away from the gate up here. We don't know. Here, Heather, she pushed me toward the gateway. Back through, please. For me. Dead, Zheng purred from by the window. She closed her eyes and took a slow, deep breath through her nose. Rotten meat. Old blood. Which means they've been there a while. I asked. Rain, stop. Rain. We have to come here, for Lozzie if nothing else. I don't want this place to be unsafe for us, my heart almost leapt out of my mouth. Zheng, stop. My giant demon host had one foot up on the lip of the window, hands braced, about to jump. She stopped at my shout, turned and raised an eyebrow. Back in the workshop, Tenny reacted too, like a startled puppy blinking and shaking at raised voices. She kept trying to look at all of us in turn, tentacles waving back and forth, unsure where to go, who to attend to. Lozzie hugged her forcefully, whispering something to her, trying to pull her back. Shaman? Zheng asked. Don't you dare. I said. That drop is hundreds of feet. Join me, shaman. She broke into a dark, toothy grin. You enjoyed the last time we flew. We fell. To escape being eaten by a building. And that happened in Sherrowford, which is not full of giant monsters and alien fauna, not physical ones. Those creatures out there could react to you in any which way at all. Yes, maybe you can repair broken knees in 20 minutes, but what if one of those things out there takes a disliking to you? I sighed. Don't, please. The Tengerud? Zheng shrugged. A good fight. I sighed, squeezed my eyes shut and pinched the bridge of my nose. I'm going, shaman. Try to keep up, wizard, she growled at Evelyn. No, Zheng, I don't. Don't. If you jump, I'm going to worry about you. If I worry about you, I'm going to make us all rush down through the castle looking for the front door. If there's anybody in here, or there is a trap set for us, we could blunder into it. Zheng stared at me for a moment, dark and unreadable, then sighed a huge, growling sigh and took a step back from the edge. She rolled a shrug. Monkeys. You know this castle, don't you? Evelyn said to her. You can guide us down there. Zheng looked at her like something she'd found smeared on the underside of her boot. Evelyn didn't seem to notice, but Tenny did. She hissed, a rapid fluttery sound like a very irate giant moth. Preem returned at that exact moment, stepping through the gateway with Evelyn's scrimshawed thighbone baton. She handed it over and Evelyn tucked it under her armpit, hand cradling the other end, like a cavalry commander with a riding whip. I am not letting those vermin have this place, Evelyn said. We go down there, we find what they were up to, we find their entry point and destroy it. Rain opened her mouth, but Evelyn carried on over her. Evie dash. Evelyn stopped. Silence settled. She couldn't meet anybody's eyes. Evie, you're not useless, I said. I'm sorry, she barked. Tenny broke. Like a faithful hound confused and goaded by the agitation of her human pack, Tenny decided it was time to help. She broke free from Lozzie's grip with a boneless wriggle of too much muscle under silken skin, burst through the gateway with a hop and a skip and an excited fluttery hiss. Her tentacles shot out like an octopus pulling itself into a crevasse, a dozen black ropes gripping the edges of the window. Evelyn went wide-eyed and stumbled back, losing her balance before Preem caught her. I reached out, a cry on my lips as I realized what Tenny was doing. Zheng rocked back on her heels, dodging out of the way, a grin ripping across her face. Rain leapt, tried to tackle Tenny to the ground. Too late. The tentacles acted like the rubber band of a slingshot, Tenny's body the stone to be launched. With an explosion of muscular force, she shot off the ground and straight through the window, tentacles whipping out behind her. Rain skidded to a halt and almost crashed into the wall. I stood dumbfounded, until Lozzie raced past me. Zheng was laughing, Lozzie was shouting, and I was still processing what I'd just seen, even as we crowded shoulder to shoulder at the window. Out in the open air, Tenny cut through the veils of fog like a bullet, the mist parting and swirling as she passed. Her tentacles withdrew suddenly, vanishing under her still folded wings like a cluster of worms retreating into the ground. Aw! Lozzie had both fists clenched, genuine panic written all over her face. Flap, she screamed at the top of her lungs. You have to flap your wings. Tenny. The fog swallowed her voice, a tiny sound against the extra-dimensional immensity. A tiny black form now, Tenny reached the peak of her arc and began to fall. For one heart-stopping moment I thought she might not know what to do. Lozzie put her hands to her mouth, white as a sheet. A thunderous leathery whip-crack proved me wrong. Tenny stretched her wings to their full span, 24 feet from tip to tip, and caught the air. Fog swirled in the sudden downdraft, and her descent slowed. The softly furred underside ruffled as she flapped once, twice, 3 times, adjusting the angle, getting it just right. The smaller pair of rear wings acted like rudders, guiding her descent as she turned a fall into a glide. The nearest of the local otherworldly fauna, a cluster of crab-like creatures sunning themselves on a nearby gray jade imitation roof, began to move away, shuffling down the sides of the building, like prey animals scuttling for cover in the shadow of a hawk. Tenny went down in a narrow spiral, a daring maneuver, kicking her feet out as she neared the ground, the no-man's land surrounding Castle Hill. She towed terra firma with little hopping steps to slow her momentum, finally bouncing to a halt and ruffling her wings, shaking them all over, stretching and flexing the unfamiliar muscles. She folded them back up, back into a cloak, and turned to look at the bodies. The whole process had taken less than a minute. I was speechless, and only realized I'd been holding my breath when I finally let it go. My head was pounding. Rain let out a low whistle. Now that's a shakedown flight for the record books. Clever puppy, Zheng purred. Tenny. Lozzie leaned right out of the window. Sympathetic vertigo wriggled up my legs, but Zheng reached out and grabbed a fistful of Lozzie's poncho, her other hand looped around Lozzie's waistband. Clever indeed, I said, swallowing on a dry mouth. She understood exactly what we were arguing about. I think. She's solving the problem. Well, if there is anybody still here, we've definitely alerted them now, Evelyn grumbled. Tenny. No. Lozzie scolded, her voice swallowed by the fog as she waved both arms out of the window. No. Come back up here. Bad girl. Tenny turned to the sound of Lozzie's voice for a second, her face so tiny from all the way up here in the apex of the castle. Fog banks drifted between us, rendered her hazy and indistinct. Either she couldn't hear Lozzie or pretended not to. Tentacles snaked out from beneath her wings and one of them waved at us, but the others turned to examine the dead bodies on the gray jade ground. If that's a real circle, she's about to breach it, Evelyn hissed. Tenny. Lozzie shouted again. Don't touch. No touch. No. She terminated her panicked plea with a sound like a steam kettle. But nothing happened. No explosion, no flash of light, no discharge of magical power, no plummeting temperature as Tenny's innocent curiosity triggered some obvious trap. Her tentacles crossed the edge of that crimson magic circle and set about investigating the corpse within. She poked at his face and got no reaction, peeled his eyelids back and leaned over to look the eyeballs. Her tentacles felt around his throat and neck, perhaps for a pulse, and rummaged in his pockets and the inside of his lightweight raincoat. They extracted a few small items and dropped them on the ground. One tentacle looped back to her own face, holding up something small and white. Spiral-bound notebook, Rain said, binoculars pressed to her eye sockets. She dropped a wallet, keys, phone, some tissues I think. Hard to tell. Tenny stared at the notebook, antennae flickering, while her tentacles lifted the dead man's wrists and let them flop back to the ground. Can she read? Evelyn wondered out loud. Not yet, Lozzie said, voice shaking. I am trying to teach her letters, she's doing really well, she's so clever. So clever. Tenny. Tenny, leave it alone. Tenny. After a moment the tentacle held the notebook up and waved it, as if showing us, then tucked back close to Tenny's body and held onto it tight. The rest of her tentacles rolled the dead man onto his side, flopping him about before gravity returned him to his back, his arms sprawling and loose. No rigor mortis, Rain said. Means he's either been dead only a couple of hours, or more than 2 days. My money's on the latter. I said, Yashu, rotten meat, Zheng purred. No missing flesh either. The bodies haven't been touched, Rain murmured. No carrion eaters out there, I guess. Maybe our proteins aren't compatible. Tenny lost interest in the intact corpse. Her tentacles drifted away, toward the shattered one. Tenny, no. Lozzie called. No. No touching that. It's dirty. Tenny looked up again. Tentacles shivered and bobbed. Her human mouth moved and she waved her arms about, flesh cloak twitching. A distant trilling, fluttering noise floated through the foggy air. Whatever she was trying to say was impossible to make out at this distance, but she sounded both confident and happy. A puppy, trying to help. It's dirty. Lozzie yelled. No touching. But she needn't have bothered. Tenny's physical transformation had apparently imbued her with a basic sense of disgust, but she'd simply never encountered it before. Her tentacles hovered over the shattered bones and pulped meat of the second corpse, but refused to touch the blood and guts. She took a step back as if confused and the tentacles withdrew too. I couldn't see her expression at this distance, but her body language was unmistakable: confusion, repulsion, sickness. She stared at the bloody corpse, then hopped and skipped a few paces back up the hill. Come back up here, Tenny. Lozzie shouted. She waved her arms, flapping. Come back up. Flap flap. Fly back. Tenny. I added my voice. Fly back here. Yes, keep shouting, I'm sure that's doing wonders for our element of surprise, Evelyn drawled. I turned and shot her a sharp frown, and she cleared her throat with a guilty look. If she knows how to fly, I'm certain she knows to come back now. Tenny looked up and down the castle, then out into the city and a cacophony of weird monsters, then down at her own feet, as if only just realizing the reality of her physical position. I sighed in relief when she spread her wings again, stretching her flesh cloak out into a rippling leathery mass and cupping the air. She did a little hopping run, beating the air with her wings, using the incline of Castle Hill to build momentum. She got her feet off the ground for one wing beat, skidded on a heel like a plane bouncing on a runway and then stumbled to a stop. Oh shit, Evelyn hissed. Wait, Rain warned, one hand up. Try again. Tenny, try again. Lozzie called, shrill with wild panic. Tenny tried again. She ran with her head down, slender legs pumping, wings heaving at the air, but it was like watching an ostrich try to take flight. She stumbled and fell and rolled in a ball, protected by her wings wrapping around herself. She got up again and ran back down the hill, hopping and skipping and unable to generate enough lift. She hissed and whirred and trilled, her frustration carrying through the fog between us. Too heavy, Preem intoned. Yes, she's too heavy for unassisted flight, Evelyn said, frowning down at the scurrying black figure below us. Not without a helping hand from gravity. Let her try again, Rain said. She's a baby bird, come on, she can do it. Catapult. Lozzie called, spreading her hands in rough imitation of Tenny's explosive launch earlier. Tenny, catapult, up. But Tenny didn't seem to understand. That behavior may have been pure instinct, Evelyn said. She won't do it again without an obvious method nearby. Tenny stopped trying after attempt number 5. Winded, bruised, confused. Stuck. She stood next to the corpses and kept looking up at us, making loud open-mouthed trilling sounds, then glancing up the length of Castle Hill towards where the front door must be, hidden from our position by the bulk of the structure. She hugged herself with both arms beneath her flesh cloak. Her tentacles had drawn in close and tight, formed a spear wall around her body. She took a few shuffling, halting steps up the hill, probably making for the door. Yeah, okay, Rain said, low and serious. She lowered the binoculars. She ain't flying back. Stay there. Tenny, stay where you are. Lozzie called, waving her arms through the window. She turned to us, eyes wide, gone pale. We have to go down and get her, we have to go fetch her. She turned back to the window, then hopped away, trying to be in 2 places at once, halted by Zheng's grip on her poncho and jeans. She scrambled for a moment like a hound on a choke chain. Slow down, mooncalf, Zheng purred. It's my fault, I brought her here, Lozzie almost wailed, crying now, starting to cry. I'm so dumb, I'm so dumb, I'm so dumb. She whirled back to the window, leaning all the way out again. Tenny, don't move. Stay there. A soft trilling sound drifted up from far below. No, it's my fault, Evelyn said, hard and clipped. I lost my temper. I shouted. She huffed at herself and shook her head, face in one hand. Please, we need to go down there and get her. Lozzie said, crying openly now. She'll get lost on the way back or Lozzie's lips shook, unwilling to voice her fears. The puppy will be fine, Zheng purred. She is almost as strong as me. Why didn't you stop her? Lozzie turned on Zheng, all tiny blazing frown. You could have caught her. Little ones have to learn, mooncalf. I'd never seen Lozzie like this before. Even when we'd come to rescue her from this very castle, when she'd been running around down there in the cavernous depths below, barefoot, abused, with blood in her teeth, she'd still retained her bouncy humor, as inappropriate as it had seemed at the time. But now all her coping mechanisms had fallen away. She'd been reduced to lashing out in panic. Because, in a way, Tenny was her baby. Zheng could go fetch her, Rain was saying. She'd be fastest. Don't be an idiot, Evelyn snapped. Zheng terrifies her, she'll run off. The puppy can make her own way back, Zheng purred. No. Lozzie yelled. I'll go, it's my fault, it's all my dash. It's not, stop saying that, Evelyn snapped at her. Lozzie recoiled. Lozzie, I said, and the soft certainty in my voice stilled her panic. She stared at me with red-rimmed eyes. You need to stay up here. But, Heather Dash. You need to stay here and stay at that window so Tenny knows we're coming down to fetch her, I continued, feeling myself pulling together inside, like bootlaces tightening around my mind. You stay here, keep calling to her, keep her from panicking. Preem, you're going to stay with Lozzie. Why her? Evelyn snapped. I'm not sitting this out, I need to look at those dash. Stop, I said, calm and soft. Evelyn, Rain, Zheng, and me, we go find the front door and bring Tenny back up here. Heather, hey, Rain started to say. I don't want you in harm's way dash. Somebody needs to hug Tenny, I said, sighed, and resisted the urge to squeeze the bridge of my nose. And hyperdimensional mathematics is always our trump card. Isn't it? Rain opened her mouth, then closed it and pulled a rueful smile. Good, I carried on. You wouldn't let me go down there without you, so you're coming. Zheng is our best bet at fighting off anything or anyone inside the castle, and Evelyn knows how to deal with any magical traps. Don't question me please, we need to do this quickly, and there's no time to call Twill right now. Right you are, boss, Rain said. From anybody else, in any other tone of voice, it would have been mockery. Rain meant it. Preem, please would you fetch the torch from the kitchen, the big one? I asked. Give it to Lozzie so she can shine it through the fog. Rain cleared her throat. Tactical question. What if this is a trap to draw us away from the gateway? We use the same plan as for Carcosa, Evelyn jumped in. My spider servitors hold the gateway from the other side. Preem can manhandle Lozzie back through if anything comes this way. I'll brain them. Lozzie declared, genuinely angry at this prospect. With the torch. A disappointing errand, shaman, Zheng rumbled. The puppy can find her own way back up. I shot a frown up at Zheng's disinterest. Nobody gets left behind. That includes you too. I didn't need to raise my voice. I thought you would have learnt that by now. Zheng stared at me, then shrugged herself into an easy grin, showing all her sharp teeth. Then we hunt, shaman. In this rat warren, nothing stands a chance. Boring. Zheng went first, taking point as Rain called it, striding 10 paces ahead of us through the twisting, jinking, rotten jade corridors of the fog castle, looking for trouble. Occasionally we passed near the outer walls and the mercy of open windows, once emerging onto a short stretch of exposed battlement, wreathed in a bank of fog so thick we couldn't see the far end, let alone down to the ground below, but most of our hurried journey plunged through darkness. The cult's source of local electricity, probably some kind of portable petrol generator, was long dead, and their strings of light bulbs did not necessarily follow a logical path down to the front door, but instead spread out through the inner passages of the castle like a sinus infection, rambling off in dead ends and trailing to nothing on unpromising spurs. Zheng's back rolled and flexed in the light from Rain's handheld torch, as Evelyn and I stuck close behind. Unfortunately, Evelyn's assumption was incorrect. Zheng did not recall the inner layout of the castle. Memory as a slave is no simple thing, wizard, she explained. Emotional details remain strong. Others, not so much. We could have taken the route Lozzie and I had used to reach the throne room, descended through the shaft cut into the bowels of the castle, down to the vast cavernous darkness and the single distant star in the void below, crossed the metal walkways over the remains of the outsider which had created this subdimensional space. In theory it wouldn't be too hard, and we could ascend back to near the entrance hall. But Lozzie and I had both vetoed the idea before we left. Without Lozzie with us, passing over that thing was too risky for an unprotected human mind. Evelyn drew a map as we went, scribbling at a pad balanced on one forearm. She slapped blank post-it notes on the walls at every junction, a classic paper trail. I didn't envy her the task, and more than once I caught her shuddering in disgust as her fingers grazed the dead gray jade substance, undeniably organic despite appearances. Or a zombie or two that survived, Evelyn muttered under her breath. Then let us find them, Zheng said, loud and uncaring, her voice echoing down the twisty little passages. Come out, little things. Come utuat. Evelyn winced. Rain pulled a pained grin. Zheng's cry trailed off, bouncing down into the depths. She turned and grinned at us over her shoulder, shrugging. See? Nothing. Good, I said. Now keep moving. For me this journey was both the retreading and exorcism of a nightmare. When I'd first squirmed and stumbled and fled through these passages and dark empty rooms, I'd been alone, cut off from my friends, pursued by monsters, and that misadventure had culminated in the horror that lay below the castle, the corpses of mutated children, capture, and murder. Now I strode the opposite way, accompanied by power. We passed a couple of older corpses. A zombie who died in the fighting, head pulled off by Twill, and the body of a middle-aged man slumped against a wall. Both were all skin and bone, the unnatural foggy air of this alien dimension having mummified them inside their own leathery skin. The man's hands had been reduced to claws, still wrapped tight around the handle of a heavy cattle prod. At least I don't need to shoot anybody this time, Rain whispered. She had her gun out as we crept through the darkness, pointed carefully at the ground, safety on. Don't jinx us, Evelyn said. Yes, let's not count our chickens, I whispered back. When we finally reached the wide open space of the entrance hall, the relief came as a palpable, physical sensation, a loosening of back muscles, a weakness in my knees. Rain actually sighed, then laughed and shook her head at herself. Foggy light streamed in through the massive open metal doors at the front, still wedged at the same angle we'd left them when we'd forced our way in, months ago. We emerged on the overlooking balcony, right in front of the sweeping staircase. The floor below was littered with the corpses of defeated zombies, beheaded, torn in two, bullet wounds through the skulls. All of them were desiccated and dry, skin sunken around the bones, most of their eyes open and shriveled in death. They hadn't rotted properly, no smell of spoilt meat in the air. I stared, confused for a moment, before I realized this was the aftermath of our fight. Well, I remember this place, Rain said, then squeezed my shoulder. Heather? I swallowed. Haven't actually seen this before. I'd been unconscious when we'd passed through here on our way out, carried on Rain's back. The Langren did all this? Zheng asked, an appreciative smile on her face. She laughed low in her throat. I have underestimated her. Not all of it, Evelyn snapped. Hurry up, she'll be just beyond the doors. Try not to look down, Heather, Rain murmured for my ears alone. She tucked the torch away and took my hand. Just one foot in front of the other. Here, I'll lead. Yes, of course, I managed, taking a deep breath. We need to get to Tenny, we're almost there. We hurried down the steps and across the killing field. I tried not to think about it, but I failed. All of these zombies had been homeless people, kidnapped by the Sherriford cult, minds hollowed out and replaced with demons. They should be buried, I whispered, a lump in my throat. We should do something. A marker or let their families or. Maybe we can, Rain whispered, and squeezed my hand. Zheng strode on without a care. Evelyn put a hand over her mouth and tried to conceal her shaking, and I decided to pretend I hadn't noticed, leave her with some dignity intact. We reached the huge metal front door and Zheng slipped out first, followed by the rest of us, out into the clinging chill fog. To my incredible relief, Tenny was right where we'd left her, a little black and white figure huddled near the base of the hill, obscured by the drifting fog, arms wrapped around herself, tentacles bristling like spines. Unfortunately, everything else was right where we'd left it too. It was like standing on the precipice of a gigantic tidal pool. Beyond the protection of the castle walls, exposed to the writhing life in the copied streets and the mountains of the Squid-Moons overhead, we mere humans faltered in our tracks. Evelyn and Rain both stopped, Rain's hand anchoring me even as I tried to pull forward. Evelyn subconsciously stepped closer to Rain, staring out at the indistinct shapes in the foggy deep. I was more used to this, after 10 years of outside dreams, 10 years of slipping, but even I felt a drop in the pit of my stomach at the prospect of walking down that hill. 30 or so meters from the base of Castle Hill rose the copied streets of a fake Sherriford, cast in dead grey jade. The buildings themselves were bad enough, familiar shapes made uncanny, but the last time we'd been down here they had not been infested. Among the streets and behind the houses and on the roofs writhed and slithered and hopped and jerked such a multitude of strange life, like sea creatures squeezed into the cracks in the ocean floor. Multi-jointed chitinous arms rose above the rooftops, terminating in crab claws and tendril feelers and tiny lamprey eel mouths. Huge barnacle things made of metal slid slowly through the streets in herds, leaving trails of thick slime behind. Stilt-legged walkers strode in the middle distance, picking their way carefully over the houses. Jellyfish tendrils dangled downward to catch unwary prey. Shelled amalgamations scuttled in the shadows, snapping at each other with their claws. Soft, squishy, white-fleshed mollusk things flitted behind the buildings as if slipping through water. And above it all, the gargantuan tentacles of the Squid-Moons drifted back and forth in an endless dance. Zheng strode on a few steps, then stopped and turned when she realized we weren't following. Shaman. Down the hill, Tenny looked up. She must have seen us. A fluttery trilling noise added itself to the cacophony of sound from the streets. Her tentacles waved, and she hopped up the hill toward us. Tenny. Stay. Lassie's voice called from somewhere very high up, rendered ghostly in the fog. Carcosa will be worse, I said. What? Evelyn muttered, blinking at me. Carcosa will be worse, I repeated, then swallowed. You're not unsettled, she asked. Rain took a long, deep breath, and nodded once. Real pea super out here, hey? She pulled a jaunty grin. Just gotta wade into it. Evelyn looked at her like she was mad. She was, sort of. Of course I'm unsettled, I have no idea how Rain does it, I said to Evelyn, and managed a small, jittery smile. But you just have to focus on what you're here to do, try to ignore all the things bigger than you. Things you can't take in. Keep them at the edge of your mind. It's what I always tried to do. Evelyn swallowed again, then nodded as well. She tilted her chin up and set her shoulders. I do need to look at those bodies. Waste to come all this way otherwise. Monkeys, Zheng muttered, shaking her head. You're telling me you'd jump into that? Evelyn hissed at her, gesturing at the royal of alien life out in the streets. I don't believe you. Not even you, you bloody great oaf. Zheng barked a single laugh. They would flee before I could get started. Tenny. I called out as we finally hurried ahead. She came trotting out of the fog to meet us halfway, tentacles all a-whirl. She barreled into me and almost knocked me off my feet, but I held on and hugged her around the shoulders. Heath. Yes, it's okay, it's okay. It's okay Tenny, we're all here. I held on tight. Hugging Tenny was a uniquely disquieting experience, because part of my mind told me I was holding a sack of writhing serpents, all muscle trying to clamp itself around me, no bones beneath her skin. Her tentacles joined in too, wrapping around to squeeze me tight. I let out a little poof of air squeezed out of my lungs, my face squished against her fur. Not so hard Tenny, ease down, please. Heather, she trilled. Ahead of us, Rain held up her torch to the fog. She clicked it on and off 3 times, in the rough direction of the apex of the castle. Our prearranged signal for Lassie. We all watched as an answering point of light in the high fog flickered on and off. Rain nodded and put the torch away. Right, that'll be them heading back inside. Inside? Tenny buzzed, blinking big black eyes at Rain. Back inside? Inside? Not yet, Evelyn said. She glanced further down the hill, at the corpses and the magic circle. They lay only a dozen meters or so away now. The circle was a single enclosure, wrapped in words that looked like Arabic. A couple of knives and a plastic food tray full of dried blood sat on the floor next to it, along with some crimson-stained paintbrushes and the objects Tenny had pulled from the dead man's pockets. The corpse in the circle was indeed a man, perhaps in his mid-20s. Tall, with wide shoulders and a barrel chest, muscled but not like a bodybuilder. He wore thick jeans and a raincoat, a fisherman's jumper on underneath that. Curly dark hair formed a corona about his head, and like every other corpse in this place, he'd not rotted properly. He looked a little dry and pinched, but that was all. His face seemed intensely peaceful in death, as if he'd died in a moment of utter conviction. It made my skin crawl. Inside? Tenny repeated. Not just yet, Tenny, I said. We need to look at the dead people. Dead, she said. Old blood, Zheng grunted, and nodded beyond the dead man, at the bloody, pulped mess of the second corpse. I could only sneak a glance before feeling sick. Mashed meat, pounded into the ground, the jade grey cracked with incredible force beneath the spars of bone and scraps of clothing, as if the unlucky victim had been hit with a wrecking ball. None of us said it out loud, but we all glanced up, at the drifting tentacles of the nearest Squid-Moon. You think? Evelyn let it trail off. No, wizard, Zheng purred. It doesn't care. Only for the mooncalf. You know that for a fact? Evelyn asked. Zheng shrugged. Maybe, Rain said, trying to sound light and failing for once. Maybe not. 10 minutes, max, then we get back inside. Agreed, Evelyn answered, then looked at Tenny. Does she have the notebook still? Give it here. Tenny. Do you have the notebook? I asked, still half-wrapped in a hug by her tentacles and one arm. Please, give it to Auntie Evie. Auntie Evie, Tenny trilled. A tentacle ventured out from behind her body, still clutching the spiral-bound notepad. Evelyn took it gingerly, as if accepting a treat from the mouth of a dog. The tentacle had left tiny needlepoint teeth marks in the cover. What's in it? Rain asked, her eyes doing a circuit of the fog around us, her handgun still out, pointed low. Evelyn flipped through the pages, scanning them quickly. She shook her head. I don't know. Not in English. Poetry, I think, lots of lines crossed out. A poet's private composition book. This isn't important, let's get a look at the bod dash. She flipped another page and stopped dead. The color drained from her face. Evie. I said, a spike of panic in my chest. Evelyn. What? Rain glanced round at the tone in my voice. Evelyn slammed the notebook shut, eyes wide, shaking, and shot a look of cold fury at the corpse lying in the circle. Evie. Evie, what is it? I let go of Tenny with one hand and reached out. Evelyn growled her frustration and flipped the notebook open again, holding it up for all to see. I choked down a scream. It was too real. I took several seconds to realize it was drawn in ballpoint pen. The work of a master, real enough to make my heartbeat race and my guts clench up. Cold sweat broke out on my back, and Tenny must have sensed my fear because she squeezed me tighter, letting out little throaty trilling sounds of sympathetic alarm. The artist had used nothing but black ink, yet had somehow managed to vary the shading and pressure by such precise degrees as to produce reality, right there on the page. He, assuming it had belonged to the dead man on the ground, had even incorporated the ruled notebook lines into the picture, creating an illusion of space and depth so believable that one's mind was tricked for a few heart-stopping seconds. Shadowed depths of a static gray sky, the great lid peeled all the way back, the void inside. It was the eye. Oh God. I shook my head, numb. Zheng rumbled, unimpressed. Tenny actually squeaked. Evelyn brandished the notepad, blazing with fury, and swept an arm wide at the corpse and the circle. I am not falling for this bullshit a second time. Evelyn, would you please put that thing away? I screwed my eyes shut. Shivering. Felt sick. I can't dash. Trauma is a paradoxical chimera. Not a single day passed in which I didn't think about the eye, at least a little. Maisie, once locked away in the most private chambers of my heart for 10 years, now roamed at will through my mind, no longer a mere ghost of longing for a missing part of myself, but now the painful promise of reunion. To think about Maisie was to chew for hours on fresh fears of being too late. Of losing her a second time, her soul wasting away to nothing out there in the darkness, in her prison cell, physical or otherwise. Every day I thought about how to rescue her, all our half-made plans planting seeds of anxiety in my chest, and it always came back to hyperdimensional mathematics. Which implied, at the end of all thought, the I. It had tortured my nightmares for so long, taught and tormented me in equal value, filled my sleep with confused memories of Wonderland. Kept the pain fresh, the wounds open. The sight of it filling an alien sky had defined the secret underside of my life for so long. Summoning a mental image of the hateful thing was easy enough. A great darkness fills the sky from horizon to horizon, blotting out the stars, the lid cracking open and peeling back like an ocean parting, mountain ranges of creased flesh revealing the void inside, the void that eats thought, that sees through you, through stone and metal and cloth and flesh and cells and picks apart your neurons and atoms and flays you to nothing. But memory can never truly record that violation, that rummaging inside one's brain, the utter atomic nakedness before that solar flare of attention. In memories and plans, it's just a huge eyeball in the sky. I can think about it, without wanting to curl up in the tightest space I can find and scream my lungs out. In ballpoint pen scribble on a page of cheap notepad paper, this cursed artist, whoever he had been in life, had captured the faintest splinter of that sensation. He'd seen the eye. He knew it. Cold sweat broke out down my back, under my arms, on my face. My clammy hands grasped Tenny, clutching her fur as if I was about to fall off the ground and into the sky. Heart thumping, pulse in my throat, head pounding. Sick, 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 wanted to vomit. Years of conditioning told my body I needed to purge this threat, throw it all back up. The abyssal thing I'd once been agreed wholeheartedly, wanted to make me small, fast, slip away, into a crack in the ground. Flee and hide and be very, very quiet. Heath. Heath. Tenny let out little trilling sounds. I felt additional tentacles wrap themselves around my body, hug me tight, looping behind my arms and cradling my back. Heather. Rain was saying my name too, but I could only shake my head. Heather, it's away. It's gone. It's okay, it's just a drawing, it's just a picture. Heather dash. Hiss, went Tenny, right next to my head, low and throaty and alarmed. Feet tripped back, not mine. Whoa, 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 okay there, Rain said. Okay Tenny, it's fine, we're cool, it's cool. Cool, okay. Put it away, please, please dash, a voice hissed, and I realized it was mine. It's gone. Evelyn said. Heather, call her off. We don't have time for this. I blinked my eyes open, confused and shaking and sweating, to find that Tenny had built a fortress around me. We'd already been caught together in a half-disengaged hug when Evelyn had held up the drawing of the eye, but Tenny had pulled me in tighter, wrapped tentacles around my middle and waist and thrown one of her wings over my shoulders like a heavy, furred cloak that reached down to my ankles, warm and fuzzy and enclosing. My fear and her confusion had triggered her instinctive camouflage, and for a moment my head swam with vertigo at the sight of my own body obscured and hazy, replaced with an image of the gray ground and wispy fog behind us. The other half of Tenny's tentacles formed a spear wall again, directed mostly at the notepad and Evelyn, but partly at Rain too. Evelyn had stepped back, clutching the notebook, frowning with disapproval. Rain looked vaguely amused, but also distracted. She kept one eye and her gun on the dubious corpse in the magic circle. I am sorry, Tenny, it's okay, and no need for that, I managed, putting a hand on one of Tenny's extra limbs and gently easing it downward. She opened her mouth and trilled at me, confused. I'm fine, Tenny. Evelyn and Rain are always friends, always safe, I'm not, it's the picture in the it's fine. Ma. Tenny vocalized, but she seemed to get the gist of it. Her tentacles drifted lower as she stood down. "Good puppy," Zheng purred. "You know how to protect your master." Tenny did a sort of misaligned blink at Zheng, almost sullen, and bleated, "Baya." Tenny's protective embrace was a bizarre feeling. She wasn't obviously built like Zheng or toned and tight like Rain, but thick ropes of muscle moved beneath the skin of her tentacles and torso, smooth and wriggly against me, cushioned by patches of thick, soft fur. The comfort of her wing over my shoulder was very much welcome right now, and for the first time in my life I got a sense of what it might be like to own a very large, affectionate dog. I focused on that feeling as hard as I could, tried not to think about the eye. My own phantom limbs helped, trying to reciprocate Tenny's hug. A pity neither of us could feel that. "Heather, how you holding up?" Rain risked a quick sidelong glance back at me. "We can turn around right now if you want." "What?" Evelyn snapped. "No, Rain, we absolutely cannot turn around. That image was too real." I swallowed, clinging harder to Tenny to have something to feel, something real under my hands. I can deal with this," I said, and wasn't sure if it was a lie or not. "Rain, you keep that thing covered," Evelyn said, nodding at the intact corpse in the circle. She tucked the notebook with its terrible secret into her coat pocket, and pulled the scrimshawed thighbone out from under her arm, settling her fingers into the correct positions amid the designs. "If it so much as twitches a little finger, shoot it." "Don't have to tell me that," Rain murmured. She was frowning at the corpse and the magic circle, hard and stony. Tenny's panic had taken the edge off her fury, turned it cold and slow and practical. "A blessing in disguise. Do you think this is a trap?" I asked, my voice dropping to an involuntary whisper. "Like with Alexander?" Evelyn grumbled and shrugged. "I don't know. That picture was just art, not magic, it wasn't doing anything. But this? This stinks." She tilted her head sideways at the magic circle. It was by far the most simple circle I'd seen so far, in the last half-year of occult experiences. Despite the rusty red color and the flaking of dried blood, it was just a single enclosing line, and a thin band of text in what looked like Arabic. Evelyn tooted. "Damn it, that's not even Arabic around the circle either, I can't make out a single word. If it's Farsi I can struggle through with a dictionary, maybe, but anything more obscure we're up shit creek with no paddle. This needs to be dismantled, piece by dash." "Oh, great and mighty serpent," Zheng rumbled, eyes tracing the words. "Accept this unworthy offering, this morsel of immortality, this paltry sign of our weakness and pitiful contrition. Deliver us from evil that we may take unto ourselves the knowledge cast without care from your hide, and find sustenance in the dust of your scales." She snorted and curled her lips in disgust. "Monkey pleading. What language is it?" Evelyn asked. "Welsh." "What?" Evelyn boggled at her. I blinked too. "Welsh? There's no magical works in Welsh." Zheng gestured at the circle. "Okay, yes," Evelyn huffed. "Obviously there's at least one. Why the hell is it written in Arabic script? What the hell is the point in that? Camouflage?" I tried. Rain cleared her throat and nodded upward, at the Squid-Moon tentacles disturbing the sea of fog above our heads. "Maybe that's what they speak. I didn't even know it was possible to write Welsh with Arabic, it must look awful," Evelyn tooted. "No wonder I can't bloody well read it, that's absurd. I don't know what we're looking at here. I admit it, fine, I'm lost. This is like walking into the back garden and finding a dead penguin." "Back up the hill, to the door," Rain said, with the kind of softness in her voice that brooked no argument. "Then I'll double tap this guy and we'll see what happens." "Oh yes, wonderful plan," Evelyn said. "You'd be a real bomb squad expert, Rain. Let's just shoot the detonator and see what happens." Suicidal idiot. For once, Rain didn't have a comeback. She cracked a silent grimace of a smile. Wait, Evie, I said, struggling to marshal my thoughts, struggling to resist the urge to hide myself completely beneath Tenny's wing. Tenny already handled the corpse. She looked in his eyes, rolled him over, disturbed the circle too. Wouldn't that have triggered a trap? Yes, Tenny fluttered. And she's fine. You're fine, aren't you, Tenny? Weh, she said. Yes. Maybe it triggers off human neuroarchitecture, Evelyn said. Don't touch it again. Don't touch anything. We need, she swallowed, spat the word. Petrol. A lot of it. Preem can go fetch some and we'll burn both these bodies without dash. Zheng strode past us and stepped right over the lip of the circle. What did I just say? Evelyn all but shrieked. Tenny bleated a warning, all a flutter, trying to drag me backward. Rain stayed stock still, aim unwavering, pistol pointed at the corpse. I would smell one like me, wizard, Zheng purred. This is an empty shell. She scuffed at the magic circle as she passed, and the toe of her boot scored a line through the flaky red substance, breaking the pattern. You don't know that. You dash. As if any newborn could overcome the inside of my skull, Leoya's or not. Let it try. Zheng squatted down next to the corpse, grabbed it by the hair and hauled it up into a sitting position. The man's arms hung loose, hands trailing on the ground. His face was so peaceful, almost smiling. Zheng peeled one of his eyes open and stared at the dull glassy orb within. She went very still. A bank of fog drifted in, muting the colors and hazing the edges of my vision. Zheng wasn't moving. Zheng. My heart climbed into my throat. Zheng. Oh shit. Shit, Evelyn hissed, backing up several paces. She tripped over her own feet or her walking stick, and would have gone sprawling but Tenny shot out one tentacle and caught her around the shoulders, another tentacle grabbing the stick and pushing it firmly into her hand. Rain adjusted her aim to Zheng's head. Zheng. Zheng. I tried again. Speak to us, big girl, Rain murmured. Stop playing, yeah, stop playing, 'cause this ain't funny. Zheng's head turned with aching robotic slowness, like a puppet grinding along rusty wires, until she regarded us through a mask of flesh, blank of expression, eyes dead and empty. Rain took a step back. Tenny hissed like a snake. Evelyn blurted out a snatch of Latin. Boo, said Zheng and burst into a roar of laughter. She threw her head back and laughed so hard she cried a few stray tears, shaking the poor corpse back and forth by its hair. You monkeys. You fall for the most base of tricks. Never gets old. Zheng, I scolded, letting out a huge breath. I can't believe you. You're such a child sometimes. Rain lowered the pistol and let out a sigh too, a twist of a smile on her lips. Evelyn went red in the face, mouth opening and closing. You absolute, I can't, you utter cow. Scared, wizard? Zheng rumbled, still chuckling. How could I not be? Evelyn raged at her, voice carrying out into the fog, absorbed and returned as ghostly echoes. That brought her anger up short, eyes flickering out at the monstrous shapes in the streets beyond. Evelyn clutched her walking stick and shut her mouth. Good, Zheng purred. Remember that, wizard. If not for the shaman, I would have already twisted your head off and eaten your heart. Evelyn boggled at her, lost for words, mouth hanging open. Oh, I don't believe this, I said, exasperated. Now, really? Evie, you offended her when you called her a barbarian and tried to order her around earlier. Zheng, Evelyn does that sort of thing with everybody, it's nothing to do with you. Zheng grunted, rolled a shrug, and dropped the corpse at last. The skull hit the ground with a dull crack. Evelyn just stared. We don't have time for this petty-this. She took a slow breath, shaking her head, trying to pull herself back together. If there's nothing in that corpse, why is he dash? Poison, Zheng purred. His flesh reeks of hemlock. Hemlock? Rain said. Real old school, huh? Hemlock? Our mystery corpse was no Socrates, that was for certain, but the idea sent a terrible shudder down my back. I didn't want to consider the details too closely, but the modern world probably offered far more accessible forms of poisonous death than hemlock. A ritual sacrifice? I murmured to myself. A ritual sacrifice with a drawing of the eye in his pocket. My mind jumped to the obvious conclusion, that this man might be a survivor of the Sherrowford cult, one who hadn't stayed for their final act of defiance against the eye, one who had decided to serve instead of resist. Zheng, do you recognize this man? From the cult? No, she grunted. But I never bothered to remember most of their faces. Only the wizards. This is no wizard. Yeah, Rain said with a sigh. I'm thinking the same thing, right? How else would he have that notebook? I cultist, which means he would have been after you, Heather. Yes, I whispered. Tenny's grip tightened on my torso. And then how the hell did he end up here? Evelyn snapped. Doing this? This circle isn't even real magic. Tenny broke it, Zheng disturbed it, it's in bloody Welsh. The circle itself isn't even embellished, it's just a basic enclosure, it doesn't do anything. This whole thing is nonsense. Maybe it was a trap, a more traditional one, meant for us days ago, but they set it up and then got bored. And this poor idiot is just bait. Zheng reached out and ran a fingertip along the edge of the circle. No, wizard. No. This magic is more real than yours. Raw. She raised her eyes to Evelyn, then up into the fog, to the nearest Squid-Moon, giant tentacles drifting through the air far above our heads. A plea to a god. What could be more real? Pleading for help, I murmured, and a lump grew in my throat. The words around the circle, pleading for help. Maybe he decided he wanted out, and I trailed off. The one on the left, Rain said softly. I'm sorry. Rain pointed upward with one hand, gun still held low in the other. The leftmost tentacle from here. Look near the tip. I squinted up into the mist, trying to make out what Rain had seen. Detail was almost impossible at this distance, and we'd left the binoculars up in the castle with Lozzie, just in case. Evelyn squinted too. Zheng straightened up, stepped back out of the circle, and saw it first. She snorted with derisive laughter. Plea answered, she purred. I made it out a moment later. A dark red patch near the tip of one of the nearest Squid-Moon's tentacles. A smear, gone dry and rusty. Offering. Rain pointed at the man in the circle. Petitioner. She gestured to the ugly mound of mashed meat we'd been trying not to look at. Rejection. She nodded up at the distant tentacle again, then grinned over at Evelyn. How's that for a theory? I don't know, Evelyn muttered. She looked from the tentacle overhead to the dry red smear of the pulverized corpse nearby, but instantly looked away again, hand to her mouth. Perhaps Lozzie can speak with her giant friend up there, she said, dripping sarcasm. Maybe it knows what happened. Maybe she can, I said, taking her seriously. Damn it, they must have come from somewhere. Evelyn hissed, her temper fraying once more. There must be doorway, the remains of a gate, but she glanced left and right along the walls of the copied buildings, the royal of monsters beyond in the streets. I followed her gaze and found one of them looking back at us, a sort of soft-shelled crustacean clinging to the side of a nearby dead jade house. 4 eyes on stalks watched us. I made eye contact and it scuttled away, back down an alleyway, stepping on the shells of a clutch of barnacle-like protrusions. Does it need to be on a solid surface? Rain asked. Yes. And it'll leave marks. Obvious ones. A doorway shape burned into the stone, first few molecules of matter scraped off, that sort of thing. Our gateway would have stripped the paint from the wall back home if I hadn't done it myself first. But we can't go out there. How on earth could they have come from there? This is hopeless, we shouldn't be down here, we shouldn't. Never again. We close that castle up from the inside, ward every window and door and never come out here again. Agreed. 5 more minutes and we move, Rain said, stepping forward. But first, let's see if we can dig up any dirt on our boy here. What? I blinked at Rain. How are you going to She tucked her pistol away and crouched down by the items Tenny had extracted from the dead man's pockets: a half-used packet of large-sized tissues, a battered black leather wallet, a heavy set of keys, and a mobile phone which looked older than me. Rain inspected the phone first, the tiny LCD screen and the blue plastic case. Antique technology enthusiast, or drug dealer? Take your pick. She held the power button down, but nothing happened. I'm sorry, what? I asked. Yes, Rain, what are you on about? Evelyn asked. Drug dealer phone. Rain waggled it at us. Harder to track one of these, doesn't use modern apps or anything. Dead as he is, though. Battery must be ancient, probably ran down sitting out here. Might be able to find a charger, see his contact list, but that's a stretch. Gives me a thought though. She reached for the packet of tissues. From inside a few tissues worth of camouflage, Rain extracted a plastic Ziploc bag of white powder. She opened a corner, sniffed carefully, and let out a low whistle. We're lucky Tenny didn't eat this, she'd be bouncing off the walls. Bois, went Tenny, almost as if she resented the implication. I don't follow. I said. Is that castor sugar? Rain laughed and gave me a look of such affection that it seemed out of place here, amid the fog and monsters and corpses. It's blow, Heather. Coke. Cocaine. Oh. Not enough to be selling though. Probably just his personal stash. Funny thing to bring along to a ritual suicide, maybe he needed a hit before the end. She slipped the phone and the drugs into her own jacket and reached for the keys. You're keeping that crap? Evelyn snapped. No, I'm going to flush it down the toilet, Rain said with an indulgent smile. What, did you think I was gonna to sell it on the street? You wound me, Evie. Wouldn't put it past you, Evelyn grumbled. Rain reached down to pick up the wallet and keys, jangling the latter. Car keys, door keys, some kind of electronic access fob thing, maybe for a worksite. Oh, got an address tag here. She turned her head sideways. 82 Barkslough Way. Maybe where he lived, there's a lead. Now for the main event, let's find out who you are, hey. She flipped the wallet open and stopped dead, and let out a theatrical sigh and tut of disappointment. Empty. Bugger, Evelyn said. 40 quid in notes, some coins ah. Rain lit up and extracted a little orange card from deep inside the wallet. Train ticket, from Staleybridge station, that's Manchester, I think, to Sherrowford Central, 5 days ago. No return, one way. Rain slipped the rest of her finds into her jacket and stared at the dead man. Looks like Chunky here did not expect to be going home. Then it was suicide. A sacrifice. Evelyn grit her teeth and looked upward again, at the tentacles far above our heads. At least we have an address, I said. That's a clue, isn't it? We're not living in a detective novel, Evelyn grumbled, eyes glued to the motion of the nearest giant tentacle overhead, like watching the weather. You aren't Miss Bloody Marple. This doesn't help us find out how they got in here, or stop them from doing it again. I think you'd make a great lady detective, Evelyn. On television, I said. She frowned at me. I cleared my throat, feeling awkward and out of place, trying anything to keep my mind on the moment and away from the eye. What I meant is, if we can find this man's flat or house, perhaps that's somewhere to start. Evelyn say, consulting detective. Rain cracked a grin, standing up and dusting off her hands. We can work on a pilot script later though, let's have a look at contestant number 2. Contestant number 2. I almost told her off for that one, but I could barely look without feeling sick. The second corpse wasn't far off, but we'd all been ignoring it, pretending it didn't exist, trying not to look at it. Except Zheng, who I'm certain wasn't bothered at all. A smear of pulped meat and shattered bone. The one mercy was the lack of smell. The fog and the strange air of this place had dried out the gruesome mass, like smoked meat. Rain looked at it now without a care. Tenny let out a bleat of protest, perhaps feeling my revulsion. On second thoughts, I might need rubber gloves for that, Rain said. There might be a... Evelyn closed her eyes and put her hand to her mouth again. Even thinking about it made her look ill. Might be a wallet or a card, something, in a pocket. Yeah, maybe. Rain walked over to it, but still didn't touch the wreckage of flesh and dried blood. Squeamish, Yashu. Zheng chuckled. Rain let out the verbal equivalent of a shrug. A little yeah, not gonna lie. Spritty grizzly. Don't want to get this on my cuffs. Zheng held no such hygienic scruples. She grunted and strode over to the smeared crimson mess, and set straight to her bloody work. Rain stood at Zheng's back, to watch, peer, point, and make suggestions. Evelyn backed up a few paces and I followed, dragging Tenny after me, shielding my vision with one hand. I winced through the waves of disgust at the sounds of peeling dried meat, Zheng scraping bits of human being off the ground. Evelyn actually turned away, hand to her mouth. We'll get back upstairs and you can set about your plan of securing the castle, yes, Evie? I stammered, saying anything, nothing, just to talk, to drown out the disgusting noises from behind us, to avoid thinking about my lover over there watching without the slightest hesitation. Evelyn, how does that sound? I think you could do it all tonight, if you're willing to disturb your sleeping pattern with coffee. I think, Evelyn just grunted and nodded. Yeah, Tenny trilled agreement. Cough. No coffee for you, I think, I doubt you need it. Do you, Tenny? No, you have lots of energy and, yes, and dash. I caught a snatch of Rain's voice from behind us. Is that a piece of pelvis? Look under there, might find a back pocket. And you could even call Twill, I carried on, louder. Her family might know something about this, yes. But really it would just be an excuse to have her over for the night. Maybe if she bodyguards you a bit you can work on the courage to ask her to hold your hand or Yes, right. Good plan, Heather. Evelyn waved me off. Evie, may I see the notebook, please? She shot me a confused frown. You're sure? I nodded. This isn't some weird masochistic thing, is it? Not at all. Just trying to occupy my thoughts. Half a lie. I'd come down from the shaking fear earlier, left a sticky layer of cold sweat on my skin, but the very fact I'd been so afraid in the first place was festering in my guts. With nothing else to think about, my mind turned back to our purpose, to the eye, to Maisie. Evelyn frowned harder, but she dug the notebook back out of her coat pocket and thrust it at me. She watched me take it gingerly, watched me flip the cover up. I knew I was quivering slightly, a lump in my throat, and I made no effort to hide my reaction. This is a masochism thing, she said. Isn't it? No. No, quite the opposite. I need to face it again. If I can't even look at a drawing of it, what use am I going to be? I flicked through the dead man's notebook. Evelyn had been right, it was all poetry, lots of lines crossed out and rewritten with slightly different wording, meter and rhythm apparent, though in a language I couldn't read. I did, however, recognize it right away. Evie, this is all in Welsh too. Not with Arabic script though. I said. You didn't recognize this earlier? Why should I recognize Welsh? Wheel, Tenny trilled, and made it sound like whale. I flipped the final page before the drawing, and revealed the depiction of the eye once more. A catch in my throat, a quivering in my belly, a hitch in my heartbeat. I stared at it, into the void under the lid, making a conscious effort to control my breathing. Forced a swallow down my throat. Evelyn said something, but I wasn't listening. Tenny purred, or at least made an approximation of a purr, and tried to hug me tighter. After several long seconds I began to see past the nightmare image, picked out each individual pen stroke, each twist of the nib, imagined the hand going back and forth to shade in the darkness. I dismantled the image in my mind. It was, in the end, just a drawing. The whole was greater than the sum of the parts, but the parts were meaningless. Could I do the same to the eye itself? Break it down into bite-sized chunks? Aversion therapy? Evelyn asked softly. Of a kind. I sighed, looked up at her, managed a small smile. From behind us came a swishing of material, like a coat pulled tight over a pair of shoulders, and I assumed Rain had turned around and adjusted her jacket, but the sound that followed drew nails of ice down my spine. A wheeze, a hiss, like cracked bellows before a dying fire, struggling to fill themselves. It was so bizarre I glanced back before I could stop myself. Rain and Zheng had their backs to us, and Zheng was wrist-deep in gore, lifting up some unrecognizable shredded chunk of human anatomy. Between them and us lay the magic circle and the corpse within. Not lying down anymore. The corpse of the heavy-set man was sitting upright. Eyes open. Arms limp. Breathing. He took a second breath, filling dry lungs with an awful grating sound. Rain? I stammered. All hell broke loose. Rain span at the sound of fear in my voice, drawing her gun. She saw the man and didn't even blink, aimed at him with unwavering precision. Zheng whirled too, a nightmare vision with bloody hands, hunched and ready for violence. Evelyn choked on a scream, raising her wand of carved thigh-bone, fingers fumbling over the right place to grasp. Tenny let out a hiss like a king cobra. But the eye of the storm didn't move. The corpse in the circle, most certainly not a corpse anymore, if he had ever truly been dead in the first place, didn't react to us. He blinked, slowly and painfully, a dry click over desiccated eyeballs. He twitched his right hand up to his face, as if suffering some kind of palsy, and slapped his own cheek. You said it was dead, said Evelyn. It was, Zheng growled. She took 3 stalking steps, circling the heavy-set man at a wary distance, like a tiger confronted by an unknown competitor. It still is. What? This is a dead thing still. The man swayed at the waist, like he was merely sleepy instead of rising from the dead. He pulled one leg back, trying to get it underneath him. Zheng was right. It had been months since I'd seen a zombie apart from herself and Preem, both exceptions that proved the rule, but I would never forget the way they'd moved. The broken shuffling, the misfiring synapses, the jerky muscles, demons in stolen flesh. This living corpse in front of us was clumsy and slow, yes, but like a man who'd awoken from a deep dream, not hijacked by a creature that didn't understand how to pilot the human form. Hey there, buddy, Rain said to him, loud and clear, circling the other way from Zheng. Hey. Hey, can you hear me? Got a gun pointed at you, friend, because I don't know what the hell you are. Blink, wave a hand, give us a sign there's someone home, yeah. Anything. Anything at all. The dead man raised his head of curly dark hair and finally seemed to see us. A drowsy, heavy-lidded look slid from face to face. His eyeballs were all wrong, dried out. His throat bobbed with a horrible rasping effort to swallow, then his mouth opened and a sandpaper croak spilled forth. Oh lads, oh we are in big trouble here lads, he slurred. I didn't know if I should laugh or scream, he was so out of place. His was not the voice of some hard-bitten cultist performing secret rituals in a hidden pocket dimension, or the whispering death voice of a lich back from the grave. He spoke like a football fan after a hardcore pub crawl, waking from a hangover in a student dorm. Hey, hey. Rain clicked her fingers to get his attention, pistol still aimed at him. You talking to yourself there, mate? Alright, he huffed, grimacing, but didn't look at Rain. Yeah, pipe down, I get it, got a scarper, gotta move. Scarper. Rain said out loud, and pulled a big showy wince. Don't think so. I can take his head off, Zheng purred. Better now than later. No. Evelyn snapped. We need to interrogate him, not get rid of him. I want to know how he got here, he dash. Evelyn yelped in surprise. The heavy-set man had been pushing to get his feet underneath him, head nodding as if drunk, and he finally succeeded with a lurch and a stumble, right toward Evelyn and Tenny and I. Tenny hissed. Evelyn almost fell on her arse, but I couldn't help but feel completely unthreatened. This man was a wreck. Even I could have probably have pushed him over. But Zheng thought otherwise. She lunged for him, arms wide, a rugby tackle from hell. No human being could have avoided that, 7 feet of toned muscle and quicksilver reflexes charging you down. An Olympic sprinter couldn't have escaped. But the dead man lurched drunkenly to the side, and Zheng went sprawling past him. Zheng growled, span, and lunged again. On the second successful stumbling dodge, nobody was laughing anymore. The man stumbled and wobbled like he was in the terminal stages of an alcoholic binge, barely keeping his balance, head wavering, blinking slow, eyes unfocused and half open at best. But Zheng couldn't catch him because he wasn't reacting to her. Every dodge and stumble he made seemed like random chance, too chaotic to control or predict. Zheng skidded past him no less than 4 times, and on the 4th he let out a confused laugh. Zheng, this isn't working, I said. Oi, lass, the dead man said, looking at Rain. You've got my coke. They say you've got my coke, yeah. How do you know that? The man said, and dodged out of the way again as Zheng tried a 5th time. He bobbed back and almost fell over. Zheng switched tactics, feigned one way to drive him the other, but that time he didn't bother moving, just stood there blinking as she sailed through the spot he should have moved to. Stand still. Zheng roared in frustration. I am, he slurred. She tried again, and he stumbled out of the way. Sorry, he held up both hands and almost fell over again as he stumbled backward. Either this guy's a bona fide drunken master, Rain said. Or something weird is going down. The man stopped again, frowning at me. Tenny hissed at him, but he ignored her. I met his gaze and his face lit up like a light bulb going on inside his skull. Oh shit, you're her. The witch. Witchy shit, yeah. Who are you? I asked. You know about the eye, don't you? Nobody, right? Not important. Nah beef, girl, nah beef. Yeah, that's right, Rain said. You've got no beef with Heather, so we're cool. Still gotta tell us who you are though. This isn't funny, Evelyn hissed. This is somebody messing with us. This is a trap, or a trick, or something we're not seeing. Back away from him, don't get near him. Rain, she snapped. Bring him down. Me? Yes, you. Rain looked at the heavy-set dead man as he dodged out of Zheng's bull charge again, then down at the gun in her hand, then at Evelyn. With this? Of course with that. What else would I be talking about? Evie, I'm not really down with shooting a guy who isn't doing anything to us. Hey, mate. Rain called. You gonna try to kill us or whatever? Oh man, the walking corpse slurred again, one eye closed. It's nice to hang but we gotta get going. Still here, why am I still here? Yeah, I know, alright. Alright, that's a plan. Cunning plan, like a fox. Smart like a fox, yeah. The man wobbled back several steps and hit himself in the head with one hand. I believe he was trying to salute us. Later, girlies, he slurred, and took off running toward the copied Sherrowford streets. Well, running, for a given value of running. He stumbled and overbalanced and barely stopped himself from flying face-first into the ground. Zheng pursued like a bullet, but the chase instantly dissolved into a farce. Every time she leapt for him he fell over, weaved out of the way, landed on his own arse, or just stopped while she sailed past. As he went he seemed to regain coordination and balance, picked up speed, and got his feet moving. His dodges became less slapstick pratfall and more actual drunken martial art. "I don't believe this," Evelyn hissed. "He's getting away. Will you shoot him now?" "Evie," I tooted. "In the back." Rain grimaced. "He won't make it 5 minutes in all that." She nodded at the monsters roiling and snapping and slurping out in the streets. "Besides, somehow I get the sense he'd step out of the way." "You'd let him go too, Heather." Evelyn turned on me. "A stray cultist, one who might be after you. Tell Rain. Tell her to shoot him, for God's sake." "I don't, Evie, he's running from us." Evelyn had a point. I disliked it, but she was right. The absolute last thing we wanted was a servant of the eye free in Sherrowford, let alone one who Zheng couldn't even touch. The abyssal ruthlessness nestled in the heart of my soul screamed, "Kill this man." "Heather," Evelyn hissed. "Rain, can you dash?" I swallowed, one half of me fighting the other. "Please shoot him. In the leg, maybe, if you can. Please." Thankfully for my nerves, Rain didn't second-guess the request. She raised the pistol in both hands and steadied her aim, breathed out slowly, and waited for Zheng to make another failed charge before she pulled the trigger. I wanted to close my eyes, but I fought the urge. "I asked for this, don't look away. This is your decision." In the split second before Rain pulled the trigger, the heavy-set man fell over on his arse. The crack of gunfire split the air, made me jump, and the bullet passed harmlessly over the man's head. Rain actually laughed at the absurdity of it. "Told you so. Try again." Evelyn snapped. "Evie, this guy is beyond us. I'm just wasting bullets." "Zheng. Zheng, come back." I yelled, but she was ignoring us now. The dead man was up and running again, and executed a perfect weave duck motion from the waist as Zheng missed him again. He finally reached the streets, vaulted over a barnacle creature of dull gray metal, slipped beneath the roving limbs of some scuttling crustacean, and slipped down a side street. Zheng plunged after him, ripping through hanging sheets of living mollusk flesh, batting aside a clutch of anemone-like feelers. "Zheng! Stop!" I called out. Her blood was up, the puzzle of this prey too much for her. She vanished into the chaos beyond the fog. 2 hours later, Zheng had still not returned. "Not planning any sleep tonight?" Rain asked, a knowing smile in her voice, as I shuffled back into the magical workshop. I blinked and squinted, trying to figure out what she meant and trying to see her. I knew Rain was right there, my lover and ally and closest friend, but for a torturous moment my brain couldn't digest the sense data from my eyeballs. My mind was running all the wrong routines, too focused on phantom limbs, on abyssal instinct, expecting a world of cold currents and predatory jaws. All I saw was a jumble of ape parts wrapped in hard angles of metal and plastic. "Heather." I squeezed my eyes shut. Squeezed them hard, took a deep breath, pictured Rain in my mind's eye. When I looked again, I saw her, and breathed a sigh of relief. Rain stood before the open gateway, on this side, safely in reality. She was wearing an old second-hand motorcycle jacket which she'd picked up earlier this week, padded and armored inside, all red and black leather. She held her pistol deceptively loose in one hand, pointed at the floor. Her other hand rested atop a homemade riot shield. She'd spent the last week constructing the thing, scavenging parts from the junkyard. A sheet of metal over a backing board of thick, stiff rubber, with plastic handles screwed into the back, all held together by liberal amounts of duct tape. I think the metal had begun life as a piece of tractor door, now spray-painted black. It looked like flimsy scrap to me, but Rain had tested it, with a knife, a broken bottle, a bat, and Preem's fist. She had judged it both sturdy and flexible enough for the job. She also hadn't meant to break it out until tomorrow, until the trip to Carcosa, and then it was only supposed to be insurance. At least she hadn't put the motorcycle helmet on as well. Without her face, I might have floundered for far longer. It sat on the table nearby, a shiny red and white half-dome beetle, next to a pair of goggles, and the packet of cocaine she'd taken off the corpse. Evelyn's spider servitors crowded the gateway too. One hung from the ceiling above, the other clung to the wall. Both of them were locked onto the gateway with their banks of crystalline eyes, stingers quivering, faint heat haze rising from the smokestack structures on their backs. Evelyn had tried to order them through, but they wouldn't go no matter what Latin orders she spat, so now they guarded her retreat along with Rain. Hopefully no retreat would be needed, what with Preem and Twill out there with her, on the other side. Beyond Rain and the spiders, tendrils of fog moved like skeletal fingers in the castle hallway. Heather? You there? Sorry, I'm fine. It's just, you look like you're ready for a street fight. And you're getting ready to command it. Rain smirked and nodded at my hands. Oh. I gestured helplessly with an entire pot of coffee in one fist, an empty mug in the other, then sighed and poured my fourth round of emergency caffeine. Yes, well, no sleep for the wicked. Hey, Heather, if anybody's big and scary enough to look after themselves out there, Zheng is. I know that, I almost snapped, tried to dial down. Breathe. Stop shaking. It's not, she's dash. She broke out from inside a concrete wall before, right? Don't tell her I said this, but I wouldn't rate the chances of anything in that freak show out there. Rain, that's not what I'm. I shook my head and sipped my coffee. Burning hot. Barely tasted it. Couldn't concentrate on the right words. Rain would never understand anyway. I struggled to reel in my phantom limbs. Even if I couldn't see them, I could still feel them. Trying to protect me from hypothetical attack, anticipating my next footstep with additional support, groping at a chair for me to sit down in, they used up so much mental bandwidth, and they couldn't even touch anything. Rain cracked another smile, just for me, the kind she usually showed me in private. We weren't in private right now, but she couldn't see the spider servitors, and Mr. Squiddy slopping around his bucket of wet clay didn't count. I'm not gonna lie and say Zheng knows what she's doing, Rain said. She doesn't, she's like me. Goes with her gut. Improvises. And that's how she'll get back. I stared down into my coffee, into the dark brown swirl. At the corner of my awareness, one of my phantom tentacles started to imitate the motion, twirling around and around. I focused on that. She's like a big old house cat that's slipped out the door to chase a rabbit, Rain was saying. She'll find her way back when she gets hungry. Hey, maybe we should hang some haunches of lamb from the windows to entice her back up here, yeah? Heather? Sorry, I muttered. I'm trying to calm down. Caffeine's given you the jitters? It's not the caffeine. I sipped more coffee. Too strong. Walked over to the table and set the coffee pot down, my mug next to it, then I picked the mug up again, set it down again. Moved to pick it up, stopped halfway. Felt like I wanted to hurl it at the wall. How's Tenny holding up? Rain asked. Oh, fine now. She's fine. Still upstairs with Lozzie. Being kept firmly out of the way, in case she decided to make another dive for the castle windows. Evelyn's new wards might not work on her, we weren't certain, and nobody was in a hurry to find out. When we'd returned, all in a hurry and feeling like the hounds of hell might be on our tail, Lozzie had thrown herself at Tenny before we'd even stumbled back through the gateway. She'd squeezed Tenny hard enough to make her bleat, kissed her face and head and cried a little while trying to tell her off for flying away like that. No going without an adult, she'd scolded between the tears of relief. No Tenny, no flying without an adult, okay? You have to promise me now, promise me. Lozzie's emotional release had gotten to Tenny, crossed the species barrier. Tenny couldn't cry. No tears ducks, Evelyn thinks. But she could shake and whimper in imitation of Lozzie's tears, wrap tentacles around her, and refuse to let go. Lozzie'll be clinging to her for a week after this, Rain said. We gotta find a safe way for her to stretch her wings. She really wanted to go for that, didn't she? Rain clicked her tongue. Yes, well. Tenny's her baby. Rain laughed. I couldn't tell if she agreed, or if she thought I was joking, or if she simply liked my phrasing. I wanted to ask for clarification, but that part of my mind drowned under a torrent of gnawing animal fear, a desire to retreat and hide, instincts for a place that was not here. I was holding the coffee mug again, trying to concentrate on drinking more. Locked in place. Staring at nothing. Heather. Heather. Rain called my name softly. Ground control to Space Cadet, come in Heather, this is Mission Control speaking. I'm okay, I lied, and finally gathered myself enough to sit down in a chair. I set my coffee down too. Stood back up. Sat down. Rubbed my thighs and pinched my knees. Needed to run, or climb into a corner. I longed to be underwater right now, curled up in a cave. Or upstairs, with the curtains closed and the lights out. In the dark. With Rain right here, dressed for war, I still felt isolated and frantic. I had done, every second since Zheng had left. You don't have to pretend for me, you know. Rain said. You can be not okay, even if it's over another girl. We'd waited down by the foot of the castle for only about 20 minutes after Zheng had vanished into the copied Sherrowford streets. I'd been shouting myself hoarse into the roiling tidal pool of fog and chitin, calling Zheng's name to no avail, not understanding why I was so panicked, why cold sweat had broken out down my back, why I felt like I needed to grow spines and toxins and hiss at my friends. The only sign of Zheng and the strange resurrected man was a sort of ripple outward through the motions of the wildlife, a scattering of the shoal before a predator, but our vantage point was too low to follow it for long. The verdant deep swallowed them up. Zheng had acted as a cork in a bottle, for scrambling emotions I hadn't examined in 3 weeks. With her around, the abyssal side of me felt safe. The squirming mutable dark creature I'd been in the abyss felt sheltered in the power of a larger pack member. Zheng was from there. She'd been born out there. She was like me. When she walked off into that fog, I regressed within seconds. My throat felt like an alien thing, but it was the only tool I had to call her name, so I kept shouting and shouting until I made Tenny panic too. She'd begun by trilling wordless noises into the fog as well, louder and louder over half a minute, her chest puffing up. Ropes of muscle rearranged themselves inside her body, permitting her lungs or whatever she used for lungs more room to expand. No ribs to get in the way. Pressed against my side in a supporting hug, she felt like an inflating balloon of leathery flesh, and sounded like a moth crossed with a frog. Her final call was so loud it cut through the fog and echoed off the exterior castle walls. Evelyn winced and shushed her. I blinked, shocked out of my instinctive fear for a second. Tenny, it's okay, no, I'm okay, I hushed her. Maybe Tenny's inhuman form helped, here was something a little like me, at least. Rain decided it was time to leave. We can't stay out here forever, she'd said. Worst case scenario, our cokehead friend circles around Zheng and comes back with some nasty mates. Best case, we all get really cold and really tired and Lozzie wonders where the hell we've gotten to. Back inside the castle and we seal the whole bloody place up, Evelyn said, already backing away a couple of paces. I shook my head, numb and confused. No. Evelyn stared at me with a scold in her eyes. I had to look away, back to the fog and the awful churn of bizarre life within. Heather. Heather, you are not thinking of following that huge idiot. You are not. Yeah, we're not following her, Rain said. Not into that. She backed away too, away from the street, the magic circle, the shattered second corpse, and her body language herded me backward. Tenny understood as well, uprooting my stubborn feet as I tried to dig my heels in. It was like fighting a giant fist. We can't. I snapped, a weird strangled noise in my throat. I felt like hissing at Tenny. We can't close up the castle with Zheng still out there. I need Dash. It's all right, Heather, Rain said. She'll make her own way back, I'm certain. I doubt any of my wards would stop her anyway, Evelyn said. Stop dawdling, come on. Evelyn led the way with her walking stick. Rain brought up the rear, gun out. Tenny dragged me back up the hill, into the shadow of the castle, then we slipped in through the gap in the huge metal doors, back into the killing ground from months ago. Shelter brought a tangible, physical relief so strong I almost sobbed. Out there in the fog, beneath the vast bulk of the Squid-Moon children and the sky whales and giant jellyfish, dwarfed by the chaos of chitin and claw and pale flesh out in the streets, the abyssal creature in me had felt like a terrified, scurrying thing clinging to the ground for the illusion of safety. I wanted to squeeze myself into the deeper parts of the castle as soon as possible, make myself small, and hide. The sensation was overwhelming. Evelyn clearly felt a human shadow of the same sensation. She let out a huge sigh and eyed the metal doors. We need to shut these. Rain. I'm flattered you think I'm that ripped, Rain said, testing the door with one hand. It didn't even flex. Nah, last time I had Twill's muscle to help. I can't shift these. Evelyn tooted. Why is idiot brute strength never here when it's needed? What about Tenny, Tenny was blinking her huge black eyes at the field of zombie corpses. 3 of her tentacles hovered over the nearest body, as if sniffing for the scent of decay. Fascinated. Blank-faced. Learning about death. I pulled together what was left of myself. Tenny, no, I murmured, trying to squeeze one of her hands. It's okay, don't touch them, don't look at them. They're all gone. Dead. A long time ago. No need to stare. Tenny. Moi, she bleated. Heather, Evelyn hissed. Tell her to close the doors. Doors? Tenny fluttered. Front door. Keep closed. Why yes, Tenny, good girl. That's right, I said. Lozzie had been trying to drum that into her. Keep the front door closed, no going outdoors alone. Look, Evie, what about Dash? I hiccuped, squeezed my eyes shut, swallowed hard. What about Zheng? We can't just lock her out there. I know this sounds silly, but couldn't we leave a note on the door? One of your post-it notes. Please close the door behind you. A note? Evelyn deadpanned at me. Please, I hissed through my teeth. Evelyn frowned at me, saw I wasn't acting normal, even for this situation. It would be the normal thing to do. Polite thing. If we weren't in a castle made of bone, yes. Don't see why not, Rain said. If it gets us back upstairs and out of here quicker. Evie. Oh sod it, yes, we'll leave a polite note on the giant metal door into the supernatural castle in another dimension, fine. She better well close it. I'll have her hide if anything follows her back home. Evelyn scribbled out a note and slapped it on the door, where Zheng couldn't miss it. Our journey back up through the castle took a fraction of the time we'd spent getting down. We followed Evelyn's trail of post-it notes and the rough map she'd drawn, worming our way through the passages like maggots in a corpse. But for me, those minutes descended into a hallucinatory nightmare. My phantom limbs wanted to pull me along the inside of the corridors, like an octopus in a tube. My body was a constricting shell, the wrong shape for this environment. Instinct screamed at me to grow spines, to sprout claws, to back up into the darkest possible corner. I hadn't been this bad since the days right after my return from the abyss. I thought I'd gotten better, but really I'd just been compensating. Zheng had been a crutch. I tried to focus on Tenny. She'd developed a unique way of holding hands. She wrapped one tentacle all the way up my forearm to my elbow, the satin-smooth surface of her skin shifting slightly with every step. Wings folded, head ducked, walking very close to my side. She hated these confines as much as I did, though for different reasons. When we reached the top corridor, Lozzie burst out of the gateway, frantic for Tenny. Evelyn bustled back into the workshop, calling for Preem, for her mobile phone, for a bucket of paint and Wellington boots and a box of nails and a good sturdy hammer. The light and normality of the workshop, of Sherrowford, of home, brought me little relief. I ached to plunge back into the fog, to grow wings and fleshy sails and trailing feelers, to search for Zheng. Even if it's over another girl? I echoed. Yeah. Rain nodded. I sighed and closed my eyes. Rain, I'm not worried about Zheng. Really? Rain waited, but I only swallowed, couldn't summon the right words, so she carried on. Could-a fooled me. You've got the jitters real bad. Am I misreading this here? Is this about the notebook, the picture of the eye? Heather, anything comes for you, I swear to God I'll dash. It's not that, I hissed in a strangled whisper. Yes, Rain, I really like Zheng. But this isn't about that. Then what it is? I can't expect you to understand, because what I'm feeling right now is not a human emotion. Try me. From anybody else I would not have trusted those words, but I opened my eyes and looked up at Rain and knew she meant that for real. She'd been on the verge of cracking a joke, some sexual innuendo about Zheng and me, but she carefully tucked it away and made room for me to speak. Guilt tugged at my heart. Why didn't Rain's presence soothe my abyssal instincts? Burning inside with shame I couldn't place, I gestured at her with my mug of coffee. You look really good and all that, I said. Not what I'd intended. I blushed and sighed, annoyed at myself. Rain broke into a grin and shifted the motorcycle jacket with her shoulders. She'd left it unzipped down the front, and I wondered what it would feel like to slip a hand inside that armored cocoon. You like the riot girl look? School, huh? Not quite shining armor, but it gets the job done. Bit sweaty though. Really? Rain raised an eyebrow. Not that dash, I huffed and cleared my throat. I'm sorry. I changed the subject. I shouldn't avoid this. I noticed. She laughed. It's okay, sometimes you gotta use anything you can to distract yourself. I need clarity, not distraction. I put my face in one hand. Of course I'm not worried about Zheng. She's superhuman. I'm not worried about her, I'm pining. But it's not romantic. It's animal. Abyssal. Yeah. I tapped my chest with my fingertips. The me I brought back. The me out there. I really like having her around. Nearby. All the fears, all the weird little disjointed perceptions, the bodily wrongness, it all got bottled up with her around. Kept under control. The abyss isn't a place for alliance or friendship or kindness, it's all predation, all the time, it's darkness and a constant war of evolutionary edge. But, with Zheng, I feel safe again, because she's from there. Survivalist logic, I suppose. She's big and mean, and on my side, so all that can relax. As the words spilled out of me, I felt my phantom limbs slow in their frantic wanderings. Talking about it helped, made room for the ape to take back the controls. Room for me to get angry. And now she's thrown herself into danger, I hissed. For what? Rain just waited, as I gathered myself and let out a big sigh. Oh dear, I said, hanging my head. Oh dear, Okay, that wasn't what I expecting to say. Oh dear. So in the end, you are worried about her, as well? I suppose so. I shook my head and leaned back in the chair. She's constantly looking for a fight, just for the sake of fighting. Rain allowed herself a smile. I do that a lot too. You put yourself in danger for me, that's different. And then you get out of danger and take me with you. Zheng wants to fight, to kill stuff. She couldn't resist following that man, not after he dodged everything she threw at him. How do you sustain a caring friendship with somebody who's determined to destroy herself? Rain raised her eyebrows. You think that's what she's doing? Maybe. I don't know. That's a human worry. The abyssal creature in me, it just wants the pack member back. Sagging with unexpected release after speaking the words aloud, I stood up from the chair and went over to the gateway, stretching up onto my tiptoes to see through the windows opposite, the windows which looked out on the fog beyond, the copied Sherrowford streets far below. Of course, I couldn't see anything from this angle, let alone any disturbances in the wildlife which might tell us where Zheng was. Heather. Rain put her free hand on my arm. It's like we've got the world's largest, spookiest cellar. I shook my head. Connecting this house to another dimension was maybe not the safest idea. Preem and Evelyn and Twill were in there right now, off down the corridor somewhere with 2 buckets of paint and a clutch of brushes. Evelyn was determined to seal the whole place off hallway by hallway, window by window, making extensive use of the same symbol as on my left forearm. They'd already been all the way down to the left, to the old throne room and a corridor beyond, painting wards around every doorway like separate bulkheads in an ocean liner. The throne room itself had been left as no man's land, the high windows too tall to reach without climbing gear or scaffolding or hours' worth of Twill digging her claws into the walls. The bank of windows opposite the gateway were each encased by rough magic circles now, simple white designs. The fractal stared back at me, painted dozens of times all over the inside walls. The paint was still drying. Evelyn and Preem and Twill were somewhere off to the right now, with an agreement to check in every 20 minutes. Twill had only been here about half an hour, but she'd come running as soon as called, in the middle of the night without complaint because Evelyn herself had done the calling. I sighed heavily. I guess Carcosa is off. For tomorrow, at least. Rain pulled a sympathetic grimace and rubbed my shoulder. I can tell Evie's gonna be up all night at this. We can't wait. Maisie can't wait. Maybe Monday. We want. Evie with all her wits about her, not sleep deprived. You don't think that man we found is the herald of something worse? Rain, he had a drawing of the eye. I can't let him, I don't want these people interrupting our plans. It's the eye, trying to interfere. That dead man dead, TCH is going to cause a problem. Rain shrugged, with shoulders, eyes, and eyebrows, an oddly innocent gesture for her. Maybe he does. Or maybe I shoot him in the head when Zheng brings him back, so we can focus on what matters. With a horrified shiver, I realized Rain wasn't joking. She would actually do that. Abyssal instinct flooded me with blind, survivalist relief, drowned out my gut rejection of cold-blooded murder. Rain understood. She knew that Maisie came before everything else. The abyssal version of Heather wanted to curl up against Rain and purr. Remove the threat, it whispered. Out loud, I said, I hope that won't be necessary. Oh, I mean, hey, yeah, me too, Rain laughed herself into a grin. Look, if he doesn't come back, if he vanishes down there, or gets eaten or whatever, maybe I can go check out the address on his keys. Maybe tomorrow, if we're not crashing a party in Carcosa. You don't have to come, I'll deal with it. In the past, Rain pulled a sheepish look, I might have done that without telling you. Now. Well, I've learnt my lesson. The last time we checked out somewhere like that, Twill got stabbed in the hand, and we precipitated a chain of events that almost killed all of us. This time we keep some distance, then. I find Kimberly Mark too, I promise to ignore her. I gave Rain a look. Rain, you're incapable of not helping a woman in need. I have noticed. She laughed. Fair enough. Maybe we let this guy go then, let sleeping dogs lie, if he's not a threat. An occultist? I don't know, Kill him, instinct whispered. A knot twisted in my stomach. Then I'll deal with it, Rain said. That's when Lozzie made us both jump. Hi-hee, a little voice whispered from the doorway. I flinched like a rabbit. To Rain's great credit, she managed to avoid pointing her gun anywhere dangerous, then laughed at herself. Lozzie. I breathed again after what felt like an entire minute. You snuck up on us. Whoopsie sorry. Lozzie giggled and flounced into the workshop, pastel poncho wrapped tight around herself with both arms. Her hair was in even worse disarray than usual, tangled up behind her, and despite the flickery smile on her face, I could see the emotional burnout around her eyes. Lozzie. Lozzie, come let me look at your hair, I said, stepping over and raising my arms to her. You're all tangled up. Lozzie plodded over without complaint and turned around to face away from me. I tooted and combed at her wispy blonde hair with my fingers. Where's Tenny? Rain asked. Went to sleep, Lozzie explained. Too much excitement for little Tentens. Tucked her into bed where she needs to stay for now. Lozzie sniffed. We'll find a safe spot where she can learn to fly properly, Rain said. Promise. Outside would be best. Lozzie giggled again, a nervous hitch in her throat. She turned her head left and right, as if searching for something she couldn't find. If I could take her somewhere with no people. No people and no beings and no fuss and no mess. Lozzie, please hold still, I murmured. I miss outside, she said, very softly, oh so sad. My heart tried to pull in too. Loz, hey, got a question for you, Rain said. Light and easy, her tone cut through the moment. Gave Lozzie something to focus on. It's not often that Rain makes me fall in love with her all over again. Yes. You got any idea what that guy might have been doing out there? Lozzie blinked big eyes at Rain, half twitching her head before catching herself. Gotta stay still for Heather, she giggled. Doing? With your big friends out in the fog. Rain thumbed at the open gateway. Do you think he was trying to talk to them? Lozzie made a squinty thinking face. No. Rain and I shared a glance. Lozzie. The kitty's squid eyes. They don't really do words are too slow for their brains, which are like super dense balls and everything's moving a lot faster than words and it's really hot in there, right? So you can't do words, but you can sing, which is fun. But it's just like playing with your hair or something, it's not communication. If you want to have a proper talk you gotta go downstairs to the star. The thing under the castle? I asked. Lozzie nodded, smiling, happy with me as if I finally understood a point she'd been trying to explain for hours. But, bodies are better than words. A chill went down my spine. Bodies? Yeah. Like you can talk with words or you can talk with your body, you know. Oh, I sighed with relief. That's what you meant, okay. Talk with your body. Rain struggled not to smirk. I opened my mouth to shush her, but Lozzie surprised me by getting there first. Dirty Rain, she sing-songed. Sex isn't what I mean. I mean talking with needs, through your body. So, body language? Rain asked. Human body language? No. No. Lozzie shook her head and scrunched up her face. Like you talk and you say you have needs, right? But that doesn't make sense, so you try to talk with the natural needs of your body and it down there, it listens a lot better. It gets bodies, not minds, at least not well. That's why it could grow a big shell. Bodies are so much cooler when you can just grow when you really need. That's what happened to me. Of course it can't do that anymore because it's not there, it left with me, but the first time I went to it, it knew exactly what I needed without words, and it fixed me. Fixed you? I asked, staring at her. Yeah. When I was little, everything was wrong. You were ill as a child. I frowned. I don't think this was something she told me in the dreams. I groped for memory, but there was nothing. Kinda. Lozzie shut one eye and smirked at me, an impish little toothy smile. My body sucked. Now it's great. Lozzie hopped away from me and lifted the hem of her poncho, bouncing from side to side. Her nervous tension had ebbed away. Talking about this was apparently good for her. She danced from one foot to the other, then skipped over to the gateway and reached up to pet the rough, scarred hide of one of Evelyn's spider servitors. For a second I worried it might lash out at her, but it didn't react at all. Good boy, she chirped. Spiders? Rain asked me, watching Lozzie with fascination. She couldn't see them, of course. Good boys. They've got your back. Lozzie did a thumbs up for Rain. Hope they do better than last time, Rain said. Lozzie did a fussy pout and turned her nose up, and petted the spider again. Well, Rain said. Maybe our boy out there was barking up the wrong tree then, if your friends aren't good conversationalists. Probably. Dumbo's always trying to boss around or get bossed around. Lozzie stuck her tongue out. Bleh. Muffled echoes suddenly broke out from the far side of the gateway, warped and distorted by the bone-like gray material of the corridor. A jumble of footsteps and raised voices. The fog swirled, pushed down the hallway by the sudden motion of disturbed air. Rain went from 0 to 60 in the blink of an eye. She readied the makeshift shield. Lozzie hopped and skipped away from the gate. I was caught between them, paralyzed for an awful moment as abyssal instinct tugged both ways at once, phantom limbs scrambling to protect me. Heather, Rain threw over her shoulder. A warning. Get back. No room for argument. What if it's Zheng? With a stomp and a scowl and a massive lacerated bruise across her face, Zheng appeared around the corner and strode through the gateway. She was drenched from head to toe in what looked like the product of a giant sneeze. Clear mucus was matted in her hair, stuck to her clothes, all over her hands where she tried to wipe her face clean. Her boots stuck to the floor with every step, making sticky peeling noises as she lifted her feet. A thin, acrid smell filled the air. Zheng looked most unhappy. Rain let out a low whistle. You lose a 90s game show or something? Abyssal Heather didn't care what Zheng looked like or what she was covered with. Inside, I soared, felt like a puppy reunited with the pack. Zheng. Goodness. Okay. Shaman, she slurred. Her jaw was misaligned, as if broken at one corner. The others piled through after her. Evelyn was scowling far worse than Zheng, holding Preem's arm for support. Twill hopped over the splashes of goo Zheng had left all over the floor, grimacing through her teeth. She looked like she'd much rather be in bed right now. Stay still, don't you dare move. Evelyn snapped. I told you to stay on the other side, for God's sake. Preem, get, oh, I don't know, a bucket of bleach. Boiling water. A flamethrower. Preem was already marching into the kitchen. I am not cleaning this up, Twill said, shaking her head and backing for the door to the kitchen as well. Nope. No way. Not in it for this. Not it. Zheng can do it herself, Evelyn was grumbling, as a cold realization came over me. Running off like that was her idea. What did you expect would happen, you dash? Where's the corpse? I asked. Looked at Zheng's empty hands. Zheng. You killed him, right? You got him. Zheng stared at me, dark and sullen. You didn't get him, I said. You didn't get him. Heather. Rain said. I failed, shaman, Zheng rumbled. He got away. My words emerged as a screech of disbelief and disappointment. Abyssal instinct welled up inside my chest, but guilt crashed back down even before I finished the sentence. Guilt for snapping at Zheng, for caring more about her prey than her bruise and broken jaw. Guilt for the way she looked at me. A kicked hound. Guilt at my own rabid aggression. Everyone was staring at me. I blushed, mortified. What happened? To your face, I mean. Did he do that? Zheng grumbled, and to my relief she pulled a broken grin. No, shaman. It's like squid ink, or skunk smell, right? Rain asked with an open grin. You ran into the wrong creature out there, freaked it out, and got sprayed, didn't you? Zheng turned her grin on Rain. I still won. You want to try it too, Yashu? No, thank you. Rain put one hand up. I'm sure you've done enough zoological fieldwork for all of us. You look like a turtle, hiding in that shell. What, this? Rain hefted her rubber and metal shield. If it works, it works. Don't knock it till you try it. Zheng grunted in acknowledgement. She eyed me with odd caution, and I felt like living rubbish. Preem returned with towels for Zheng and a bin liner for her clothes. Make sure you rinse those off outdoors before loading the washing machine, Evelyn told Preem. For all we know that crap will dry like superglue. So go on then, what happened to our boy? Rain asked. Zheng shrugged and grunted, and began struggling out of her ribbed sweater. I prepared myself for another uninterrupted view of her nude upper half, but even that couldn't distract me right now. Abyssal demands were being made deep in my soul. If he got away there must have been a gateway, Evelyn snapped. This is important. We could still reach it, still find it. What happened? Zheng pulled her sweater off over her head and used it to wipe more slime off her face and out of her hair, then dumped it into the bin big. Nothing happened, wizard. I made a mistake. She gestured at her bruised face. And he didn't? I asked. He knew the wildlife. Zheng blinked as she thought about that one. She rolled her shoulders and raised both hands to grab her own face and jaw, then yanked her skull and her jawbone sideways at the same time. A crunch filled the air, and Zheng worked her jaw up and down normally again. No, she decided. He moves like dust on the wind. Invisible currents under his feet. Prey that can see a handful of seconds into the future is no prey at all. Is that what he was doing? Rain asked. Zheng nodded. Either he sees the future, or reads intention. Or both. Explains how he dodged the bullet, Rain said. But where did he go? Evelyn demanded. She clicked her fingers, then huffed and muttered an apology with a wave of her hand. This is essential. Did you see the gateway? Any sign of it? Anything at all? Zheng shrugged. He slipped into the mists. I lost his scent. Vanished. Through a gateway then. Evelyn raged. Shit. Shit, shit, shit. Dude could still be out there, Twill offered, quite unsure. I guess, like, in theory. The way he moved, he could be, I murmured. Did you at least close the front door of the castle? Evelyn asked. There could be a mystery dead man out there in the fog, there's nowhere else for him to go except through a gateway, or back up here. Yes, wizard, Zheng rumbled, fixing Evelyn with a steely look. The door is shut. Satisfied? Yes. Yes, thank you. Evelyn managed to make thank you sound like an insult, but Zheng grunted an acceptance all the same. You idiot, Zheng. It took a moment for me to realize those words had come from my mouth. shaman. There's things bigger than you out there. Look at you, your face is your hurt. She shrugged. Nothing can beat me, shaman. What if you'd gotten stuck? We wouldn't have been able to get you back out. Your foe is my foe, shaman. The revenant had to be put down. Yes, I failed. Don't insult me further. I'm not insulting you. I snapped at her, abyssal fear turning to anger. I need you with me, you idiot. It hurts when you're not, when I'm, damn you, Zheng. Don't leave. Don't leave me alone. The room fell into an uncomfortable silence. I sniffed back unexpected tears and scrubbed at my eyes. Lazi crossed to me with delicate tiptoes and rubbed my back. Zheng eventually grunted a noncommittal noise. That was one of the most unhealthy things I'd ever said. Eventually, Evelyn cleared her throat and set her walking stick at an angle. We need to find that gateway. Or. She held up a hand to forestall the inevitable objection. We need to confirm a body. Or that he's still out there. Yes. Yes. Before or after we finish the paint job on an entire castle? Twill asked, nodding at the gateway, hands in her pockets, looking tired. Look, Evie, that's a huge task in there. And I don't think any of us fancy tangling with the creepy crawlies out there if they can do that to Zheng's face. I don't fancy that, yeah. The rest of it can wait, Evelyn said. We need to find this man, or confirm he's gone. Somehow. Alright, girlies, he said. We all turned Twill with her claws out, Rain raising the pistol, Zheng dark and brooding, Preem stepping in front of Evelyn, and there he was. Standing right on the other side of the gateway to the castle, in his raincoat and his pinched, dead skin. He pulled a goofy sort of smile. A rush of pure aggression passed through me. My throat closed up. Phantom limbs braced, wanted to twist his head clean off. I bit my tongue hard enough to draw blood. All right yourself, Rain answered, low and dangerous. She pointed her handgun at him. What's up? Well, he looked off to the side, as if listening to somebody else. Yeah, right. Then he turned back to us, grinning and wincing like somebody who knew they were being a bit of a bother. Mind if I use your front door? Sue, no other way out. Yeah. Cool, we're cool, yeah. Yeah. There exists a specific facial expression, rarely encountered in the isolated wilds of university libraries and the lonely teenage years of scrawny young women on antipsychotics, a smiling mouth with cringing eyes, spiced by a knowing twinkle, on the verge of a defensive laugh. An expression which says, I know I am doing something I should not, but I am going to do it anyway, in full view of those who disapprove, because I do not have any other choice, and I shall embrace being a cheeky little so-and-so. The heavy-set dead man, the risen corpse from the fog, the revenant on the far side of the castle gateway, smiled at us like a small boy about to escape punishment on a minor technicality. Just mosey on through, yeah, he said, pointing vaguely through the gateway, toward the door to the kitchen. Be outta ya, hair in 5 shakes of a dog's tail. Cat's tail. How does that go again? He frowned at empty space for a second, at nobody and nothing. Lamb's tail. Bro, what? Yeah, whatever. Oh great, Twill hissed. You didn't mention he was a whack job. Thought that part was obvious, Rain said. He steps through that gate, he'll die a second time, Evelyn muttered. Zheng watched him with the deceptively detached interest of a waiting tiger. His flippancy did not help the aggression and adrenaline surging through my veins. My phantom limbs lashed and whirled, impossible to control the abyssal desire to pull his head clean from his body. I was furious, and I didn't understand why. In retrospect, the source was obvious. This entire diversion was distracting us from the Carcosa experiment tomorrow, from another step in the plan to rescue my sister. Evelyn's spider servitors framed the gateway, hanging above and beside. One step over and he was finished. I swallowed my anger. Let the spiders do their job. Eyes blinking out of sync with each other, the dead man took in my glare and the barrel of Rain's gun, and settled on Zheng. He raised his fists in a clumsy boxing stance. "Wanna throw down again, big lass? Or we done?" "Yeah." Zheng blinked once, slowly. "A lizard on a hot rock." "Nah. Nah. We cool then," the man continued. "Yeah, we cool, dudettes. No probs, no probs, I'll just let myself out, you know." He opened his fists into a mock surrender pose, and stepped over the gate's threshold on exaggerated tiptoes. "It's your funeral," Evelyn drawled. Then she frowned, when nothing happened. "What dash?" I blurted out, confused. Lozzie grabbed one of my arms, held on tight. She must have recognized my bubbling, uncharacteristic aggression. Somehow, her proximity helped drain the worst of it, stop me from doing something unwise. "What dash?" "Heather." Evelyn hissed. "What are they playing at?" The spider servitors hadn't reacted to the undead man at all. As if he simply wasn't there. Stingers waving, crystalline eyes fixed on the gateway, they ignored him. "They don't appear to care," I said. The dead man smiled and wiggled his fingers. Up close, without the softening veil of otherworldly fog and lacking the distraction of a sea of bizarre alien life scuttling about behind him, he looked obviously like a man on the verge of death. Or was he a dead man on the verge of life? His skin was pale in the manner of an olive complexion that hadn't seen sun in 20 years, a few blue veins visible through the papery surface. He looked half mummified, flesh stretched tight over the bones of his face with the drying effect of the fog dimension, but his joints moved without creaking or cracking, no splitting skin or flaking tissues. His big raincoat looked new, extra large to accommodate wide shoulders and a thick waist. His eyeballs were shriveled like half-dried prunes, and he kept scrunching up the muscles in his face, as if he was in mild pain. Part of me wondered if he would suddenly plump out if dunked in a bath, like one of those just add water children's toys. "Fat lot of use," Evelyn hissed. "I'll do it myself." "You think you can just walk out of here?" She took a half step out from behind Preem, her scrimshawed thighbone held carefully in both hands, walking stick tucked into the crook of her arm. Without being asked, Preem extended one hand and held Evelyn's elbow to steady her balance. Walk out." "Sure. Yeah." The man turned up his cheeky smile. "Puttin' one foot forward, then the other. Walking, you know." "Oops, but you can't do that." "Missing a foot, aren't you?" "But me, I'm walking here." "Right on out, who, yeah." He made a sideways upward swooshing motion with one hand, mirrored the gesture with the other, and tucked his face into his bent elbow. Rain snorted. "How do you know about my leg?" Evelyn asked, voice suddenly cold. "Who the hell are you?" He dropped the gesture and took another exaggerated slow-motion step, like a cartoon character creeping across creaky floorboards. He even did a little side-to-side glance, as if none of us were here and he was watching for observers. It was so absurd I had to shake my head with disbelief. "Oi, mate, best stop there if I were you," Rain said from behind her homemade riot shield. A sympathetic shiver went down my spine. She spoke as if talking about where to sit in a pub, pitched her voice so casually, yet filled it with such menace. "I've got a gun pointed at you, and I'm a pretty good shot, if I say so myself." Yeah, saws, no beef, yeah." The dead man waggled his raised hands. "You are not going anywhere," Evelyn said, quiet and cold. "I want to know who are you and exactly what you were doing in there. Nobody comes back from the dead without crossing certain boundaries, and you are either an idiot or pretending to be one. So, which is it?" "Yeah, dumbarse," Twill added, but looking faintly confused. "And don't assume your acrobatic nonsense will work with me," Evelyn continued. "There are more ways than physical of enforcing my will. Yes, I whispered, abyssal instinct in total agreement. Burn him out, Evelyn, it hissed. Burn him up. I swallowed down my aggression, hands shaking as I clung to Lozzie. The dead man pulled a mock-scared face, a big toothy cringe, and lowered one of his surrender-posed hands to point at Evelyn's scrimshawed thighbone, looking left and right as if playing to an invisible peanut gallery and a laugh track. He slid 1 foot sideways, a half-step closer to the kitchen doorway, but nobody backed up to make room for him. The non-threatening act was as complete as it was deliberate. Reckon you can dodge all of us at once? Rain asked, light and easy. Probs, he slurred, closing one eye in struggling concentration. Was that an act too? He was certainly more steady on his feet than he'd been down in the fog. Probably, yeah. I thinks. Real drunken master, eh, said Rain. You somebody important, famous, somebody we should know? Nobody, really. He laughed a big deep chuckle. You drew the eye, I blurted out. At my side, Lozzie murmured a little, Heather, no, but it was too late. The dead man's gaze met mine, and for a split second he was somebody else. Mannerism melted away like ice under a blowtorch. A pained flinch flickered across his face, a single frame of mistake, before his features quickly rearranged back into that infuriating schoolboy smile. He boggled at me with the look of a puzzled idiot. I went cold inside. What was that? I hissed. Wah was wah, he slurred. The eye. I groped for a handhold, my brain slipping off that bizarre moment of transformation he'd shown. You know what I'm talking about, this dash, I fumbled for a moment, waving an empty hand as I realized I'd tried to use one of my non-existent tentacles to pick up his notebook from the table, where Rain had left it, next to the bag of cocaine and her helmet. I corrected, used my actual, physical hand, like a sensible human being, and held up the incriminating evidence. You drew it in here. Didn't you? I know it, you know who I am as well, you said so. It's in your head, isn't it? Yeah, little lady, I know you, 'cause you're the freaky one. Freaky. I frowned, a decade of habit running up against the reality that I was, indeed, kind of freaky these days. Excuse me. And that's not what I was asking. Nah, like, you know, yeah. Not tangling up with you, nah. What's your name? Rain asked. Oh, for pity's sake, Rain, Evelyn hissed. Who gives a damn? His cheeky schoolboy smile intensified, curling up at the corners. Joe. Surname's King. Evelyn death glared at him. Twill frowned for a second, then rolled her eyes. Lozzie giggled. Took me a moment to get it. Rain let out a theatrical sigh, tooted, and shook her head. Wrong answer, mate. You're going the right way for a shattered kneecap, you know that. Mr. Joking smiled wider. You'll miss, Miss Shooter. You know it, and so do I. Already missed me once, didn't you? Yeah, that was neat trick, Rain said. Fancy sharing it? Nah. I dumped the whole magazine into you, maybe I learned by watching. Aw, but you've only got 5 bullets left, he laughed. Rain stared at him for a heartbeat, and I realized with stomach-clenching shock that he'd wrong-footed her. He'd wrong-footed Rain. Lucky guess, she said. The dead man did this huge comedy wink and nose tap and took another slow step toward the kitchen door. Twill, right in his path, bristled and growled and bared her teeth. Her hands were already swirling into wolf paws, claws flexing. Bullshit. Twill spat. You can't dodge bullets. He can, Langren, Zheng purred. Yay, big lass is right, he said. Come on, girlies, I ain't got no beef at all, not with you lot. I'll just be on me way, and we can forget all about ever knowing each other any which way dash. Sod it, Evelyn snapped. If you won't talk sense, I'll bloody well make you. Dodge this. Her fingers shifted across the pattern on her scrimshawed thighbone, and completed the infernal circuit within. I'd only seen her do this once before, months ago, and I was not prepared for the effect. Neither was anybody else. The ambient temperature in the workshop plummeted in a single breath, flash freezing tiny ice crystals onto the edge of the table and across the metal front of Rain's riot shield. A wave of cold air sucked a gasp from my lungs, slipped chill fingers down my collar, and made poor Lozzie shiver inside her poncho. Static electricity danced across everyone's clothes. And a strange sick fear twisted inside my chest, a pressure like somebody standing on my ribcage, the backwash from Evelyn's spell. Lozzie let out a little poop of surprise. Twill stumbled back, shaking her head like a hound tormented by wasps. Rain, right in the path of the effect, sagged forward and then took several very deliberate paces backward, trying and failing to conceal a wince. I let out a hiss, an instinctive reaction to that crushing feeling. Only Preem was unaffected. Wizard, Zheng rumbled, granite on granite voice like an angry mountain. It's not aimed at you, stop being a baby, Evelyn snapped over her shoulder. The dead man had gone still and quiet, his eyes unfocused, frozen in that hands-up gesture of surrender. The first time Evelyn had used this particular technique, the cultist she'd interrogated had been unable to retain control of his bodily functions, with predictable results, but Mr. Joking appeared to have merely gone slack inside. Like he was suddenly empty. Nobody home. Is he like switched off? Twill hissed. "Esfitch," went Evelyn, frowning at the dead man. She clicked her fingers at him. "You. Walking corpse. What's your real name? Who the hell are you?" He blinked once, as if coming back around, and his face shifted. Nothing about his physical form actually changed, but I had the sudden distinct impression of a much older man. He adopted a mildly irritated frown, totally alien to the laddish comedy grin from before. He adjusted the set of his shoulders, the distribution of weight across his hips, the angle of his chin. He stood up straight, not wavering, with drunken energy, eyes open and calm. A totally different person looked back at us, and was not impressed. Behind him, the spider servitors finally reacted, as if he'd only just stepped into the room, but then they stopped, poised on the brink of attack. They sensed his intent before he acted. He extended both hands and twisted his fingers together in a complex pattern. "Whoa, whoa, whoa!" Rain shouted. Zheng growled, deep and low enough to hurt one's bowels. Evelyn blinked and took a step back. I'd never seen it before, but with everything I'd experienced over the last few months, one did not need to be a magician to recognize magic. "Stop," I said, quietly. "Stop." His eyes flicked to me. He stopped. I swallowed, forced myself to speak. "You know who I am, which I hope also means you know what I can do," I managed to squeeze out. "And I am barely holding myself back from doing violence to you. Magic takes time. What I can do is instant, and happens at the speed of thought. No magic. Not in here." He slid his eyes from me. His fingers remained locked in place, looking as if they'd break if pushed any further. A Mexican standoff. I was only partly bluffing. Moving one's fingers in a complex pattern. That hardly invoked the instinctive, animal danger of violence that would summon brain math, push me past the threshold of my own pain. I could stop him, but it would take a second or two. Magic could look so mundane sometimes. So boring. What the dash, Evelyn was hissing. "You, how dash? Nifydd ik dominiad yn gweithio arnaf," he said. "What?" went Twill. I said, frowning as I struggled to make sense of the sounds, let alone the words. Whatever he'd said, it had a lilting, musical quality, almost a sing-song way of speaking. "What?" Evelyn snapped at him. "Your domination won't work on me." Zheng translated. "Welsh again. I.e." He nodded. Answer in English, Evelyn spat. Name. Y2HWNTICH deal, he said. Beyond your comprehension, Zheng supplied. Wizard, she rumbled, and I knew she was talking to him, not Evelyn. Wizard, I will learn your tricks, and then I will eat your heart. The dead man glanced at Zheng, unconcerned, then back at Evelyn. You are out of your depth, he said to Evelyn in the richest Welsh accent I'd ever heard. I have no quarrel with you, say, or with the demon. Let me leave, and you will never see me again. His accent threw everyone off. Barely comprehensible in English, all elongated vowel sounds and dropped y's, an accent suited only for talking about the weather, small woodland animals, and the state of one's flower garden. Utterly different to the man he'd been mere moments ago. To hear a Welsh accent spoken with such seriousness, about magic and demons, was so jarring that I almost laughed in hysterical confusion. He should have been on a BBC regional interest show, talking about bumblebees or mountain climbing. I sensed for the first time the contours of an unexamined prejudice I never knew I held. Evelyn was visibly struggling to hold on to the spell now. Her breath shook, beads of sweat ran down her forehead, and without her walking stick in one hand she was leaning heavily on Preem. Evie, drop it, Rain said. "'S not working. God damn you all, Evelyn spat. No, he dash. Let go, Preem intoned. Evelyn huffed, and relinquished her grip. The spell fell apart with a crackle of static and a rise in temperature. I sucked in a great lungful of air, as if I hadn't taken a full breath in minutes. Evelyn almost fell over too, but Preem caught her, steadying her mistress back to her feet as Evelyn struggled to get her walking stick in place. The dead man's disapproving frown endured for a second longer, then he seemed to dismiss us with a shake of his head, like a puppet with the strings passed to another hand. He staggered sideways and waved his arms for balance, the cheeky schoolboy grin back on his face. The spider servitors returned to ignoring him, as if he'd vanished. Aw come on bro, that stank shit burned, you could taken some, he said, his voice returned to the laddish nonsense from before. No trace remained of the sing-song Welsh accent. He regained his balance with some difficulty, almost blundering back through the gateway. He dusted himself off, winked one eye shut with drunken pressure, and took an unsteady but deliberate step toward the kitchen doorway. Who the hell are you? Evelyn spat at him. I told you, nobody really, he chuckled. How many of you in there? Rain asked. He shrugged the shrug of a man who did not expect us to believe his ignorance. Multiple personalities? Twill asked. What the shit is this guy? I doubt it, I snapped, angry as I stared at the strange dead man. Real dissociative identity disorder isn't like in films and television. That was an act, wasn't it? An offensive one. He winked at me, and made a sort of clicking noise with the corner of his mouth. I felt myself bristle. We were being played for fools. We're talking to a surface-level caricature, Evelyn said. The other one was real. A mage. This is just a disguise. And he knows me. Who are you, damn it? Is the eye in there too? I asked. That pained flinch returned, and now I recognized it. The drunkard did not respond to the name of the eye, but the Welsh speaker did. The expression passed again, the disguise resumed. What? In here, he tapped his head. You're the crackers one, little lady. Would I be up and walking around if the big looker was in my skull? I frowned, confused. So you weren't with the cult? You weren't part of what happened? Wheel. He pulled a face. I was, but I wasn't. He was no wizard, Zheng rumbled. She watched him like a hawk, his every tiny motion. I would remember. He winked and tapped his nose again. Worked them, didn't I? Remember you though, big lass. He infiltrated them, infiltrated the Sherrowford cult, Evelyn said, cold but oddly impressed. Pretended to be a simpleton. He's a mage, from somewhere else. You will explain who you are, or I will find a way to make you. You think that was my only trick? He pulled that cheeky, drunken, I decline to answer face. You mean you didn't end up enthralled to the eye, like the others? I asked. Why draw it, then? He put a finger to his lips and took another step toward the doorway. Why you gotta keep saying that name? Speak of the devil and all that. If you even know the bugger, you're under the gaze. Real Rattlebones voodoo, right? Let's not get his attention. Softly, softly, catchy monkey. If you know anything about the eye, you have to tell me, I said. We're not leaving this standoff until you do. Nah, I can go whenever I like. He gestured at the kitchen door again. Gonna be on out. But he glanced to the side, talking to his real self again. I really need my coke back, yo. I do, bro, please. Yeah. Then he looked at Rain directly, then over her shoulder to the bag of white powder on the table. Can I get my stash? Sneak in a pouch for your boy, yeah. Mercy. If you're so bloody unstoppable, Evelyn said, why don't you just take your stuff and walk out of here? You're bluffing. You're a mage, in a vulnerable position in another magician's home, and you know what that means. Why even keep up the disguise, Why bother? Method acting, baby. He pointed a pair of inaccurate finger guns at Evelyn, face spreading into a goofy grin. Can't switch off a whole brain partition, can I? Partition, Preem echoed. Yes, quite, Evelyn said, darkly smug. That's a big word for you. Your personas are breaking down, leaking into each other. Plus, walking out of here, that's the plan. That's the plan. I'm not the man with the plan, I'm the man on the plan. The drunkard took another sliding, comedic step toward the kitchen doorway. He was almost within arm's reach of Twill now, and winked at her. All right, lass. Wanna shift or have I gotta squeeze on through? He put his hands together in a diving motion, aimed past Twill's shoulder. Just get past, yeah. Just wanna get out of doors. Out of your hair, like. An invisible ripple of potential passed through the room. Group violence proceeds by inevitable, instinctive logic. We're built for it, I'm sad to say, human beings and human-adjacent beings and beings that have learnt too much from humans. I've never had the dubious luck to be at the epicenter of a riot or an angry mob or the viciousness of a real street fight, but it doesn't take experience for one's hind brain to resonate when one's in-group is about to commit shattering violence. It pulls you along like a strong current, so much easier to swim with it than fight back, and I am not a strong person. We were all feeding off each other's fear, paranoia, and protective desires. Rain wanted to put him down, for me. Evelyn was incensed by the intrusion on her territory, and now her home, by the threat of another mage. Preem would do anything to protect Evelyn. Twill responded with aggression because the rest of us did. No single physical signal heralded the frenzy. Small adjustments, of posture and intent. Rain twitched her aim. Twill lowered her head, rapidly transitioning into a snout full of too many teeth. Preem let go of Evelyn and turned to the dead man, hands clasped in front of her, chin high. And I? My abyssal instincts wanted him dead, out of the way, not a threat, sensible, polite. Savannah Ape Heather screamed that we needed to question him, but she was overruled. In the back of my mind, I prepared a single digit of brain math, a single switch from a 0 to a 1, to make my phantom limbs a pneumosomatic reality. He sensed it too. A drunken footstep transitioned into a wobble, a loose-boned waver. He was going to call our bluff, the drunken master would dodge everything we threw at him. Stop, monkeys, Zheng rumbled. And I did. In retrospect, Zheng was the only person present even remotely capable of calling this off. The abyssal side of me listened to her, in a way it wouldn't with anybody else. Lozzie was hanging off my arm, making this tiny warbling sound in her throat, trying to hold me back, but she wasn't enough. Zheng's growl cut across my thoughts, short-circuited the cold survivalist logic. I took the controls once more. Stop, yes, stop. I added my own voice. No, Yashu, Zheng purred. You cannot catch this prey. None of you. I glanced up at her too, expecting a light-hearted jibe at us silly, slow monkeys, but she was staring at the dead man too. A shiver passed down my spine and through my bowels. If Zheng had looked at me like that, I would have curled up in a sobbing ball on the floor. She wanted him dead, not in the panicked, group instinct way we had just done. Her threat to eat his heart had not been exaggeration. That's what I said, the drunkard protested. I'm just gonna mosey on out of your hair, out of life, off to the skies, yeah. I will catch you and eat you, wizard, Zheng purred, a tiger's chest vibrating in the jungle darkness. I will hunt you and watch you and learn how you work, and I will eat you. Bone and marrow. I have devoured cleverer magicians than you. The drunkard pulled a mock-scared face again. This is absurd. Evelyn spat. He can't avoid us all, he dash. You saw what he did earlier, I said. Zheng is right. We'll lose a physical contest, and he'll leave, he'll escape, which means we might never find out what was going on down there at the foot of the castle. Come on, this is bullshit, Twill said. You didn't see him, Langren, Zheng purred. I'll just be off then. The dead man threw us a rough salute. No, I said. No, you won't. He turned to look at me, and I saw the other man floating behind his eyes, the Welsh speaker. The real him. The boss. You're not leaving without answering my questions first, I said, or rather, heard myself say. My pulse pounded in my throat and inside my own skull. I felt so small, so ineffective here, in this unexpected contest of wits with a mage. With Alexander, in the minutes before I'd killed him, I'd been right down at the bottom. Now I was home and safe, with a nice haircut and my friends arrayed around me, but I needed to intimidate this man, this resurrected magician, and I am not good at doing so, not good at bluffing, but I was equally certain that nobody else could. Zheng's restraint spooked me the most. By not rushing him, not killing this hated example of her most hated type, she'd accepted that right then, she couldn't. And that was terrifying. Lozzie went a step back from me, but I wormed my hand down and found hers, held on tight. The dead man pulled that irritating smile wider and did a terminally uncoordinated shrug with both hands. You might be able to avoid all of us, yes, I said. And maybe you're such a powerful mage that you can stop anything Evelyn might to do you. But you can't stop me. Really? He squinted at me, absurdly overacting the role. Really, lass? You can't stop self-implementing hyperdimensional mathematics. Not at the speed of thought. It's not physical, not something you can avoid by stepping 6 inches to the left. And you know that, because you know about the eye and what happened to the Sheriford cult. You must have picked up a few details about me. I'm Heather Morel, by the way, but you already know that, I suspect. Lass. I do. Really don't want to deal with the spooky little midgets, now, can't deal with the dash. Excuse me? I said, suddenly bristling. I'm not that short. Yeah, wouldn't piss her off with that right now, Rain said with a click of her tongue. She's getting ready to turn you into a red smear on the floor, like she did your old boss. I suppressed a wince at that one, at my history of murder. I had to make him believe, had to make myself believe. Yeah, cool. He did this big wince and thumbed at me while looking off to one side, mugging for his internal audience again. Or showing off. I couldn't figure out how much was real and how much was acting. I don't know if you can read intentions or read the future, I said. But whichever it is, read this, read what I'm doing now, and decide if you can dodge. With a clench of my teeth and stomach muscles, I dipped a hand into the oily sump at the base of my soul, and began to weave an equation. The first few pieces of molten hot mathematics slammed through my mind and drew a wince from my throat. Define this man in front of me, define the space around him, something he can't dodge through. That would hurt me, really hurt, but in my mind I gestured toward it, toward the mathematics to define a three-dimensional space he couldn't leave. He raised his hands, eyes wide. Yo yo yo, I just do what the boss tells me, he makes the decisions. Then I winced through a spike of headache. Excuse me, but may I speak to him? The drunkard pulled a showy cringe. Ah, he doesn't, you know, he just does the work. I slid the next few figures of the equation into place. Lozzie hugged me tight as I shook. A single bead of blood rolled out of my nose and stained my lips. Playing chicken. Brain math might actually work, but it was also too risky, in a room full of my friends, with a dangerous magician as my opponent. What if he was fast enough to counter me? What if Evelyn got hurt, or Rain? Or Lozzie? Was it worth the risk? Deep down, I was willing to let him go, because we had bigger things to deal with. In that, the abyssal creature and the savannah ape were in agreement. Do not waste time on this man, do not let him hurt your friends. Get rid of him, and focus your energies on your sister. If that meant letting him go, the abyssal side of me was willing to accept the compromise. If he talked. Very well, he said in a heavy Welsh accent, as he straightened up. As he stilled. As the real man resurfaced. The transformation from the drunkard to the Welsh speaker was unnatural, confusing to the senses, to the basic program of social recognition built into the human animal. Either the dead man was the greatest actor of our age, or whatever he'd done to his mind went beyond mere self-suggestion. The spider servitors twitched again, stingers rising. The Welsh mage locked his fingers together in a complex symbol, on the verge of some esoteric magic, and they paused. I let the equation go and almost fell over. Lozzie held on tight as I staggered. I got my feet steady, an arm around Lozzie's shoulders, wiped my nose with the back of my hand and swallowed a mouthful of bile. Rain pointed her handgun calmly at the Welsh mage's head. Twill stood, all wolf, ready to pounce. Mutually assured destruction it is then, said the Welsh mage. I nodded. I'm glad you understand. You twitch wrong. I put a bullet in your head, Rain said. You can try, he replied. Enough, I huffed. Answer my questions, and then I'll let you leave. Heather. Evelyn hissed. It's the only option, Evie, I said. I don't think we can stop him without risk to ourselves. And despite what he says, he can't just walk out. He needs to bluff, and that's failed, so now we talk. How do I know I can trust you to let me leave? He asked, voice lilting like music. I shifted myself in Lozzie's support, standing up straighter. Had to concentrate for a moment to get past the thick accent, so I took the opportunity to study the man's eyes, shrunken as prunes. His faint frown spoke of superiority and disapproval, but also disinterest. He did want to leave, and was not invested in us. Not the arrogance of Alexander Lilburn, used to being obeyed and bullying to get his own way. He watched me as something to be avoided or overcome, not as a silly little girl to be browbeaten. Because she's Heather, Lozzie said, with a little pout. Because I care deeply about my friends, I said. Which is everyone in this room except you, and you've convinced me of your potential to hurt them. If you convince me you're not a threat after then it's not worth the risk to get rid of you. And, I left unsaid, you haven't actually done anything to us, and I don't know if I can murder you in cold blood. Yes you can, whispered Abyssal Instinct, and I knew it was true. It is always worth killing wizards, shaman, Zheng purred. We got a deal. Rain asked for me. Oh yeah, Rain said. The craziest. I frowned at him. The drunkard sagged and sighed and straightened back up as the Welsh mage once more. Why do you keep doing that? I asked. Why bother with the disguise? Atblegal, he grunted. Reflex, Zheng translated, then continued. Wizard, your deal is with the shaman, for safe passage. Once out, you're mine. You cannot find me, demon, he said. As soon as I leave your sight, I will be somebody else, and you will not see me. Zheng growled. I flinched. Twill jerked around at the noise, agitated. Stop sparring, I raised my voice as best I could. Tell me why you drew the eye. He shrugged, guarded. An object of study is an object of study. One illustrates fish or birds, why not gods? It's not a god, I snapped. He raised his eyebrows. It's not. He looked off to the side with a tiny sigh and muttered a string of exasperated Welsh under his breath. Evelyn went stiff, and for a moment I thought the man was casting a spell, until Zheng translated his words. Is this really the time for metaphysical philosophy? She purred. You believe it's a god. Why? Why use that word? I asked, couldn't let this drop. Do you worship it? He tossed his head. If you petition something in the way one must an outsider, is it not a god? His eyes slid to the notebook in my hands. I wish that returned. The poems have personal, sentimental value. No, Evelyn deadpanned. You did magic in Welsh, we'd be fools to give that back to you. Do you think I'm that much of an idiot? Now, who are you? The truth would make no sense to you. Evelyn ground her teeth. What were you doing down there in the fog? Where's the gateway, how did you get in? Doing? He let the word hang. The same thing as you, say. And yes, I know who you are. I know what you seek. Our kind are all the same, are we not? No, Preem intoned. Evelyn hesitated, wrong-footed by her dull demon's devoted defense. The same as your mother, too, the Welsh mage continued. She had much the same knack for creating loyal servants. You even speak as she did. The same silver, the same bite. You are almost like Loretta Say reborn. Evelyn turned pale, eyes going wide, all her aggressive bluster blown out like a candle flame in a storm. Preem stepped in front of her, back ramrod straight, meeting the mage's gaze with her blank white eyes and prim expression. Be quiet, she sing-songed at him. Ah, maybe you are Loretta after all, he said. Who? Twill was frowning, confused. Oh dear, a small part of my mind filed that away for later. There would be a later, I told myself. Everything was going to be okay. She's not, Rain said, not amused. Don't go there. Hoo-hoo, Evelyn murmured. You're not old enough to have known her, not as you're barely older than me. You would have been a child. Even I am a mask, he said. Hey, Rain said. Over here, Ratlicker. How'd you dodge Zheng earlier? Feel like sharing? Trade secret. You dash, Evelyn grit her teeth. This was spiraling out of control. He was playing us. What happened down in the fog? I blurted out. Who was the other person? The corpse. He shrugged. A double cross. You lost though, Evelyn hissed, blazing with cold anger. You were working with Lilbun? I asked. Who was the other corpse? I dunno. Some cow, the drunkard continued, hands and fingers still locked in his magical symbol, holding us at bay with the implied threat. Meant to help me do the thing with the big lads out there, but looks like it didn't work, yeah. Dunno what Eddie wanted, but I got what I needed. We cannot let this man leave, Evelyn said, glancing back at me. Heather, no. No, not now. This is no dabbler caught between larger fish, this I don't know. This is a real mage, I am not letting him go. Rain, shoot him. Dunno if that's gonna work, Evie, Rain said, no trace of humor in her voice. She understood too. Ah, he sighed, as he straightened up and the Welsh mage flowed back into his muscles and mannerisms. It seems I must break the stalemate. You call our bluff, we'll call yours, I warned, putting as much confidence as I could into my voice but felt none. This magician scared Evie, put Zheng on the back foot, seemed to ward off the spider servitors. This had gone from nothing to real, too fast to track. The Welsh mage ignored us, and looked up at Zheng. Slowly, purposefully, he trailed his eyes down the length of her exposed torso, down her tattoos and the red chocolate skin beneath, across the gaps left by my breaking of her chains. I see you have been ruined, Senex Amica, he said. His disapproving frown turned to a subtle smile. Some of my handiwork is spoiled, and that of my predecessors. Perhaps it was the motion of muscles unseen beneath Zheng's skin that warned me. Or perhaps an imperceptible change in her face. Or perhaps, at sufficiently high levels, one can actually sense the desire to kill, to rend limb from limb. Perhaps when steeped long enough, hate and revenge can become a palpable miasma. I shall have you again someday, demon, said the Welsh mage. Zheng rippled, the beginning of a quicksilver motion, a forward surge to tear this mage's tongue out. She bared her teeth, a razor-sharp shark's maw. His words had changed her mind. She wanted him dead, and not after a long hunt. No matter the spell ready to go off.